Chapter 1494. Senior Tianjian spent 10 years refining the Supreme Divine Hall of Mercenary City with the Holy Emperor's strength. The Anata Tower is clearly at a much higher grade than the Supreme Divine Hall. I wonder how long it'll take me to refine the first layer of the Anata Tower with my current strength. Jianshan pondered inside as he hesitated. There were only 2 or 3 years until the invasion of the foreign world. He did not know if he could refine the first layer of the Anata Tower in that time. Don't worry, Master. The Anata Tower may be a supreme quality god artifact, but refining it is divided into 9 steps. With Master's current strength, you really can't refine the entire tower, but if you refine the first layer with Qing Suaz and my assistance, it shouldn't take you long, said Ziying. Ziying's sword arrived above Jianshan's head and transformed into a handsome young man in violet robes. Master, we'll assist you. Qing Suaz's sword also arrived above Jianshan's head and transformed into a beautiful woman in an azure dress. Jianshan gritted his teeth and said, "If that's the case, I'll try and see if I can take the Anata Tower out before the invasion." Jianshan immediately sat down and began to refine the stone tablet with the assistance of the sword spirits. As Jianshan refined it, the 300-meter-tall stone tablet before him immediately began to change. The bottom of the jade-white tablet gradually turned black, and the blackness continued to spread upwards at an extremely slow rate. The black part was the part that Jianshan had successfully refined. When the stone tablet turned completely black, it meant that he would become the second true master of the Anata Tower after the Anata Grand Prime. However, the further he went, the more difficult it became to refine the stone tablet. When the black color on the stone tablet had spread to a height of 1 zhang, the speed at which he was refining it had clearly slowed down. Unknowingly, Jianshan had already refined the stone tablet for a year. During that year, he had refined 9 floors of the first layer of the Anata Tower. However, the final floor was unimaginably difficult to refine. Jianshan used all his strength, but his progress was extremely slow. However, Jianshan did not give up. He continued to refine it as hard as he could. Finally, after half a year, he successfully refined the final floor, allowing the blackness to reach 1/9 of the stone tablet. This meant that Jianshan had successfully refined the first layer of the Anata Tower. He could gain basic control over the tower now. Jianshan slowly opened his eyes. His forehead was covered in fine beads of sweat. Even though he was extremely exhausted, there was uncontainable excitement in his eyes. At this moment, he could clearly sense that he had established a mental connection with the Anata Tower. He could vaguely sense everything on each of the 9 floors of the Anata Tower. However, he could only vaguely sense everything on the 2nd to 9th floors. His senses on the first floor were extremely clear. He could even vaguely sense the dark world that the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt had destroyed. The destroyed dark world was as vast as space to Jianshan. It was unimaginably large. The Tianyuan continent was not even 1/100th the size of it. The 9th floor really does contain the Anata Grand Prime's treasury. Jianshan murmured to himself. His eyes lit up, and he appeared 100 meters away as if he had teleported. He stared at the empty space before him. The treasury has been hidden by the Anata Grand Prime in a spatial crack on the 9th floor. Even the tower's spirit can't open it. Only the master of the tower can open it. It's a pity that I'm too weak right now, so I can't open it. Sigh. Jianshan sighed gently. He was greatly disappointed. With a flash, he returned to the heavenly palace of Bisheng. I can't sense the existence of the heavenly palace at all. It must be a projection left behind by the Anata Grand Prime through her abilities in the past. Jianshan studied the palace for a while before striding in. A while later, Jianshan arrived in a hall within the heavenly palace. He stood at the entrance and stared ahead. There was a white jade platform at the end of the hall. It was only the size of a millstone and seemed more like a cushion for meditation. Jianshan stared at the platform for a while before looking behind it. There was a statue there. It was a statue of a woman. Her body was wrapped in a white dress, and her figure was exquisite. Her beautiful face was indescribably beautiful. She stood there with her head slightly raised, as if she was staring at the void. Perhaps one could not sense any shocking aura from her, but she gave off a feeling that she was one with heaven and earth, and had blended with the great path. It was as if she was no longer a person, but had become the great path of heaven and earth, forming a kind of rule. Who is that person? Is she the Unata Grand Prime? Jianchen stood at the entrance as he stared at the woman in a daze. He found it very difficult to believe that the Unata Grand Prime, who ranked in the top 3 in the Saints' world, was actually a woman. Ziying and Qing Suo appeared as well. They also stared at the statue in a daze. A while later, Ziying said, although the old master had clashed with the Unata Grand Prime several times in the past, the Unata Grand Prime was shrouded in ways, which made his figure hazy. Basically no one in our immortals world has ever seen the Unata Grand Prime's true form. His voice has fused with the ways as well, becoming a tune that encompasses everything in the world. It's impossible to tell whether he's male or female. In reality, even in the Saints' world, there are many Grand Primes who have never seen the Unata Grand Prime's true form. The heavenly palace of Bishing is the residence of the Unata Grand Prime. That's true, but there's a statue in the Unata Grand Prime's residence. Is this the Unata Grand Prime's true form? Or is this woman the most important person in the Unata Grand Prime's heart? Qing Suo frowned slightly as he stared at the statue curiously. Sigh. At this moment, an obscure sigh echoed through the illusionary heavenly palace of Bishing. It was the voice of a woman. It was gentle and beautiful like the music of immortals. It was enough to raise people's spirits and give off a sense of vicissitude. When Jianchen heard the voice, he immediately became surprised. He looked around, but he did not see anyone at all, nor did he sense where the voice came from. It was as if the voice echoed through the entire heavenly palace of Bishing, or even the entire 9th floor of the Unata Tower. Ziying and Qing Suo's eyes narrowed as well. They had also heard the sigh. They looked around, but they did not discover anything either. It's not the voice of the Unata Tower spirit, nor is it the voice of the Unata Grand Prime we're familiar with. It's definitely not the voice of the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, Ziying said sternly. May I ask who you are? Jianchen asked. He looked around cautiously. He could already vaguely sense everything on the 9th floor of the Unata Tower. Only the heavenly palace of Bishing exceeded his senses. The senses of his soul were suppressed here as well, completely useless. I've waited here for over 3 million years. Finally, someone has come. You are the first person to come here in over 3 million years. The obscure voice rang out once again, echoing through the entire heavenly palace of Bishing. It was difficult to locate where the voice came from. But this time, as he spoke, a white blurry figure gradually appeared beside the statue at the end of the hall. The figure was very hazy in the beginning, where only a rough figure could be seen. However, it gradually cleared up after it appeared. In the end, it was finally possible to make out her appearance. She was exactly the same as the statue. Not only was her bearing the same, but even her bearing was the same. Jianchen looked at the figure and was greatly shocked. He carefully glanced at the twin swords and immediately became rather uneasy. He asked sternly, "Are you the Unata Grand Prime?" "I am Unata," the figure gently replied. However, she looked into the distance as she reminisced about the past with mixed feelings. Jianchen's heart sank as his face became extremely ugly. He had never thought that he would actually encounter the Unata Grand Prime here. Even though he could tell that the figure was probably a clone of the Unata Grand Prime, it was still extremely bad news to him. He refused to believe that the Unata Grand Prime could not recognize the twin swords. Possessing the twin swords was equivalent to revealing his relationship with the Immortals world. The Unata Grand Prime might even believe that he was a part of the Immortals world. The Immortals' world and the Saints' world were enemies, and the Anata Grand Prime had even fought against the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt in the past. This would be extremely disadvantageous for him. As a matter of fact, the fact that he was related to the Immortals' world would spread through the Saints' world. Jianchen could already imagine how he would be hunted down once he went to the Saints' world. Jianchen's face sank as the light in his eyes flickered. At that moment, he was tempted to disperse the Anata Grand Prime's figure, but he did not know the strength of the Anata Grand Prime's clone, so he did not act rashly. The Anata Grand Prime did not seem to notice the change in Jianchen's expression. She continued to stare at the sky in the distance as she said gloomily, "In the past, I fought against the greatest expert of the Immortals' world, the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. I was unable to defeat him, and had to flee with heavy injuries. Just as I was making my way back to the Saints' world, my disciple, Ta Ji, suddenly launched a sneak attack on me. I was caught off guard and allowed the sneak attack to succeed, worsening my injuries. It was also at that moment that I suddenly understood that my disciple was secretly working with the Grand Prime, Yen Zun, to kill me while I was heavily injured so that he could steal my comprehension of the laws of fire." Chapter 1495. Jianchen gasped when he heard that. At that moment, his gaze towards the Anata Grand Prime underwent a drastic change. The woman had fought the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt and was heavily injured, unable to use the Anata Tower. Afterwards, the Immortal Emperor Ta Ji launched a sneak attack on her, worsening her injuries. Yet, she was still able to defeat a Grand Prime of the Saints' world under such circumstances. Just how shocking was her strength! After that battle, my injuries were so severe that my soul dispersed. I died in a spatial crack. In the final moment, I sent a sliver of my soul into the Anata Tower to leave behind my legacy so that my legacy would not end. You, on the other hand, are the first person to arrive here after I've been waiting here for over 3 million years. Since you're able to arrive here, it means that you're fated with me. The inheritance belongs to you. It doesn't matter if you're from the immortal dimension or not." The Anata Grand Prime's legacy. Jianchen was stunned. Disbelief filled his face. His connection to the Immortals' world had been exposed, yet not only did the Anata Grand Prime not care about that, but she even gave her legacy to him. It was like a pie had fallen from the sky. The Anata Grand Prime's condition is probably terrible right now. After all, this sliver of her soul has existed here for over 3 million years. It should be about to disperse soon, which is why she chose me as her successor. Jianchen understood when he thought up to there. If that were not the case, he would never have believed that the Anata Grand Prime would be willing to leave her legacy to someone from the Immortals' world. She probably had her reasons for doing this. The Anata Tower is suppressed by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. My soul will weaken with each passing day, and it's about to run out now. I don't have much time left, so I'll formally bestow my legacy to you. My only request is that you go to the Saints' world to kill the Grand Prime Yen Zun once you have enough strength. Are you willing to do so? Towards the end, the Anata Grand Prime's eyes shone with a shocking light as she stared at Jianchen. Her voice became extremely stern when she said, "Are you willing?" Jianchen clasped his hands at the Anata Grand Prime. He said sternly and firmly, "Don't worry, Senior. If I obtain Senior's legacy, I will definitely kill Grand Prime Yen Zun and avenge Senior once I have enough strength." The Anata Grand Prime nodded in satisfaction when she heard Jianchen's oath. Her shocking gaze calmed down once again, and she said, "I have 2 legacies. The first is the Fortune Jade Pedestal, which contains my cultivation method and some comprehension. Not everyone can practice this cultivation method. Only those who are fated can obtain it. The second is my extreme comprehension of laws. I have comprehended the laws of fire, creation, and destruction to the limit. This bead contains my extreme comprehension of the laws of destruction. I will pass it on to you. Fuse the bead into your soul, and you will be able to comprehend my laws of destruction. Comprehending laws is crucial to reaching godhood. If you reach the peak of reciprocity, only by comprehending laws can you reach godhood. Otherwise, you will never be able to make any progress and will remain in the origin realm forever. The first layer of laws is deity, the 10th layer is God, the 20th layer is over God, the 30th layer is divine king, the 45th layer is infinite prime, and the 60th layer is chaotic prime. If you can comprehend the 80th layer of laws, you will become a grand prime. If you can comprehend the 100th layer, you will become a peak grand prime. Even with the entire saints' world in perspective, there were only a few peak grand primes. The laws of destruction I have left you are the extreme. How much you can comprehend will depend on your fortune. With that, a thumb-sized black bead slowly drifted over. In the end, it stopped before Jianchen. Immediately, the bead radiated with the power of the laws of destruction. Jianchen was unable to contain his excitement as he stared at the black bead. He slowly extended his hand towards it. At that moment, the Anata Grand Prime was no longer staring into the distance. Instead, she stared at Jianchen. A sliver of eagerness appeared in her eyes, as well as a sliver of hidden excitement. However, it disappeared in the blink of an eye. She had hidden it away. Finally, Jianchen gently grasped the bead. He sensed the slightly familiar power of the laws of destruction, and a strange light immediately flickered through his eyes. Excitement appeared in the depths of the Anata Grand Prime's eyes the moment Jianchen grasped the bead. There was a sliver of viciousness hidden within as well, but it only appeared for a split second before vanishing. Her eyes became calm again. They were extremely deep. Jianchen tightened his grip on the black bead. He did not fuse the bead into his soul immediately. Instead, he took out a wooden box from his space ring. Under the Anata Grand Prime's confused gaze, he slowly placed the black bead into the wooden box before tossing it into his space ring. The Anata Grand Prime's eyes narrowed by an undetectable amount. She could not help but ask, "You need to fuse the bead into your soul to comprehend the limits of my laws of destruction. May I ask why? Don't you want to comprehend the limits of my laws of destruction?" Jianchen showed respect. He clasped his hands at the Anata Grand Prime and said, "Senior, you've misunderstood. It's not that I don't want to comprehend Senior's laws of destruction, but I believe that comprehending the limits of the laws of destruction right now is rather inappropriate. I plan on finding a quiet place to comprehend them in the future." "What's inappropriate about that?" "No one can disturb you in the Anata Tower. If you go outside, it'll be even easier to disturb you. At the same time, comprehending laws is of utmost importance. If you're disturbed during the process of comprehending laws, causing your comprehension to be forcefully interrupted, you will suffer extremely severe injuries. In severe cases, you might even suffer a backlash from the laws, causing your soul to disperse," the Anata Grand Prime said sternly. "Thank you for your warning, Senior. I am extremely grateful, but I've stayed in the Anata Tower for far too long already. There are still important matters I need to deal with outside, so I can't stay here for too long. If I comprehend the laws now, I'm afraid I'll be delayed and end up ruining the important matters," Jianchen said calmly. He was neither servile nor overbearing. He stared at the Anata Grand Prime with brimming interest. The Anata Grand Prime's figure had already become extremely faint. It seemed like she would disperse soon. After a moment of silence, the Anata Grand Prime said slowly, "If that's the case, I won't rush you. However, you must remember to fuse the Pearl of Laws into your soul as soon as possible so that you can comprehend my laws as soon as possible so that you can go to the Saints' World and kill the Grand Prime Yenzun." With that, the Anata Grand Prime's figure slowly dispersed under Jianchen's gaze. After the Anata Grand Prime's figure completely vanished, Jianchen slowly arrived before the statue cautiously. He studied it for quite a while and frowned silently. "Zing Qing Suo, Do you think the Anata Grand Prime has really dispersed, or has she continued to hide? Jianshan asked the sword spirits secretly. Only the two of them could hear his voice. It would not spread. The sword spirits did not reply. After a while of silence, Qing Suo's voice rang out in Jianshan's head. Master, she doesn't seem like the Anata Grand Prime we remember. Master, I also suspect that she's not the real Anata Grand Prime. Although we've never seen the Anata Grand Prime's true appearance before, our instincts can't be wrong. Ziying expressed his opinion as well. They communicated through communication techniques, so their voices did not spread out. Jianshan said calmly, so you've seen through it. That's right. That Anata Grand Prime really isn't the real Anata Grand Prime, because I saw a sliver of familiarity in her eyes when she gave me the Pearl of Laws of Destruction. Even though she hid it very well, I just happened to catch it. The familiar gaze is extremely similar to the Tower Spirit. Is she the Anata Tower Spirit? It's a pity that we can't sense the Tower Spirit's presence in the heavenly palace of Bishing, or we would be able to recognize him with a single glance no matter what he takes on, said Ziying. It doesn't matter if she's the Tower Spirit or the Anata Grand Prime's disciple, Taji. Either way, the Pearl of Laws of Destruction she gave me can't be used. There's definitely something wrong with it, Jianshan said coldly. A vicious light flashed through his eyes. He did not care about the fake Anata Grand Prime's experiences. Afterwards, Jianshan looked at the fortune jade seat before the statue. It was only the size of a millstone and 3 inches tall. It was pure white and shone with a gentle, white light. When Jianshan approached the seat, he could sense a refreshing presence radiating from it. Just a small whiff of it was enough to make him feel refreshed and energized. It was as if his soul had become even more consolidated at that moment. Master, this fortune jade is a top-grade treasure of heaven and earth. It's extremely rare. If you wear a piece of fortune jade while cultivating, not only can it increase your cultivation speed, it can also help you comprehend the Tao. It's similar to the Enlightenment Ancient Tea Tree, but its effect is inferior to that of the Enlightenment Ancient Tea Tree. I just never thought that the Anata Grand Prime would possess such a large piece of fortune jade. Fortune jade is so valuable that even the old master, one of the 5 grand exalts of the immortals world, did not possess one. Among the 5 grand exalts of the immortals world, only the Nirvanic immortal exalt possessed one. However, it's not even a third of the size of this piece of fortune jade. Qing Suo said enviously before gently sighing. He was filled with pity because the fortune jade seat before him was also an illusion. It was only a projection just like the heavenly palace of Bishing. Jianshan was immediately tempted, but he could only sigh helplessly. This Anata Grand Prime sure is capable. This fortune jade seat is only a projection, yet it possesses the same effects as the real thing. Sigh, if only this fortune jade seat were real. With this item, it would be much easier for me to comprehend the way of the sword. After pausing for a while, he asked, the fake Anata Grand Prime said that the fortune jade seat contains the Anata Grand Prime's cultivation method and some comprehension of cultivation. Ziying, Qing Suo, do you think this is fake? Jianshan became much more cautious after discovering that the Anata Grand Prime's projection was fake. He did not dare to believe anything that had to do with legacies so easily. Chapter 1496. Master, I think what the fake Anata Grand Prime said was true. After the Anata Grand Prime fled after being injured by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, it was extremely likely that he had been ambushed by Taji and Yen Zun. In the end, the Anata Grand Prime died, and before he died, he used an ability to project the heavenly palace of Bishing and the fortune jade of the saint's world. He also recorded his cultivation method in the fortune jade, leaving behind his legacy so that his legacy would not be severed. This is because there are very few people who can enter the heavenly palace of Bishing in the saint's world. If he had not done that back then, it was extremely likely that his legacy would have been severed. Jianshan sank into his thoughts. After quite a while, he deduced, if that's the case, the legacy that the Anata Grand Prime left behind should be true, and what the Anata Grand Prime, who was most likely transformed from the Tower Spirit, said was extremely likely what the Anata Grand Prime had left behind in the past. It's also true that he obtained the legacy and killed Yen Zun. The only thing that can't be trusted is his comprehension of the laws of destruction. That's right. The comprehension of the laws of destruction is extremely likely to be part of the Tower Spirit's scheme. His goal is probably to possess Master. As an artifact spirit, he actually wants to possess Master. That's going against the heavens. He needs to pay an unimaginably high price, and the slightest carelessness will lead to his death. Has the Tower Spirit gone mad? Ziying scoffed as if he was mocking the Tower Spirit's naivety. So much for the Tower being so agile for countless years to actually have such thoughts. With me, Qing Sua, and Ziying present, it's impossible for it to succeed. And has the Anata Grand Prime not realized that urging Master to fuse the bead into his soul in such a hurry would only lead to Master's suspicions? Qing Sua scorned. Whether he's the artifact spirit of the Anata Tower or just a fragment of the soul of the Anata Grand Prime's disciple, Taji, we can't be certain right now. However, I do see some familiarity with the artifact spirit of the Anata Tower in the eyes of the fake Anata Grand Prime, and the Tower Spirit just happens to know the laws of destruction. I think he's probably the artifact spirit of the Anata Tower. I never thought that the artifact spirit of the Anata Tower would survive the explosion of the immortal Emperor's essence blood. Jianshan deduced and sank into his thoughts. He then thought of the black bead he had stored in a wooden box in his space ring. He continued to communicate with Ziying's sword spirit, but even if the Tower Spirit isn't dead, he must be extremely weak. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to not attack me when I condensed my body earlier. It's extremely likely that he's so weak that he can't even deal with my soul, or in other words, he doesn't have the power to break through your defenses. If that's really the case, there's no need to worry about the Tower Spirit at all. He's even weaker than me and Ziying right now, and with the Anata Tower suppressed, it's basically impossible for the Tower Spirit to recover. Even if he does recover a certain amount of strength in the future, Master can kill him with a flick of his finger, Qing Sua snickered. She took pleasure in the Tower Spirit's miserable fate. Jianshan did not think too much about this. Even though he knew the Tower Spirit was still alive, he was unable to find where the Tower Spirit was hiding. After all, he had only refined the first floor of the tower. He could only vaguely sense the space from the second to the 9th floor. He could not grasp every corner as clearly as he could on the first floor. As for the bead, although he guessed that it was extremely likely to be possessed, Jianshan did not believe that it was where the Tower Spirit resided. My priority right now is to increase my strength. Only when I'm powerful enough will I be fearless of all threats, Jianshan thought. He looked at the fortune jade seat before him and slowly made his way over to sit down on it. Although the seat was only a projection, Jianshan actually felt like he was sitting on a piece of real fortune jade when he sat on it. Immediately, a sliver of coldness radiated from the fortune jade, spreading through his body. Not only did he feel relaxed, but even his chaotic force seemed to circulate slightly faster. At the same time, a refreshing presence invaded Jianshan's head from the fortune jade. At that moment, Jianshan entered a wondrous state. At that moment, Jianshan felt like the clouds had parted to reveal the blue sky. The hazy and profound laws of the world were now clearly laid out before him, as if he could see every single vein in the world. This fortune jade seat really is something good. Sitting on it really can help people comprehend the way of the sword. It has the same effect as the comprehension tea tree. If I can just sit here and cultivate, my comprehension of the way of the sword will definitely skyrocket, Jianshan thought. Then he sighed. It was a pity that it was not a real thing, or he could have taken it away and sat on it every day to cultivate and comprehend the way of the sword. However, at this moment, a gentle power suddenly radiated from the seat. Before the gentle power, Jianshan felt like he had become a tiny boat in the ocean. He was so insignificant, being pushed off the seat without being able to put up any resistance at all. At the same time, an obscure voice rang out in his mind. "You are not fated with me. You cannot obtain my legacy." The voice sounded like both a man and a woman, old and young, like an insect and a bird. It seemed to contain all the sounds in the world, fusing with all the sounds in the world. "This is the voice of the Anatta Grand Prime." Jianshan's face changed as he stood before the seat. He became surprised and doubtful as he carefully recalled the voice that had rang out in his soul. A while later, a gleam of light flashed through Jianshan's eyes. He sat down on the seat again. He was not interested in the Anatta Grand Prime's legacy because he cultivated the chaotic body. Even though the Anatta Grand Prime's cultivation method was heaven-defying, it was not necessarily suitable for him. What he truly wanted was to cultivate on the seat and use its wondrous characteristics to comprehend the way of the sword. However, this time was no exception. Jianshan only sat on the seat for a few seconds before the gentle power appeared again, pushing him away. "You are not fated with me. You cannot obtain my legacy." The Anatta Grand Prime's voice rang out in Jianshan's head again. It was impossible to tell if the voice was male or female, or even if the voice was young or old. It contained all the sounds in the world. It had become a way, a law, directly reaching into the depths of his soul. "Can't I even sit on it and cultivate?" Jianshan's face became uneasy. He was unwilling to accept the fact that he was unable to enjoy the treasure before him. Even though the seat was only a projection, it would still be extremely beneficial to his comprehension of the way of the sword, just like the comprehension tea tree. At the same time, he did not have much of the comprehension tea tree left. Every single leaf gave him an extremely limited amount of time to comprehend the way of the sword. However, if he sat on the seat, there would be no time limit. He could continue to comprehend the way of the sword. Jianshan gritted his teeth. He was unwilling to give up on this opportunity. He sat on the seat for the third time, but this time, he only treated it like a regular cushion. He sealed off his senses, preventing himself from comprehending the mysteries within the seat. He hoped that he would not be rejected, as the pure energy within the seat would still flow into his body as long as he sat on it. In the end, Jianshan was disappointed. He only treated the seat as a cushion, but he still lasted for less than 3 seconds before he was pushed out by the gentle energy within the seat. The sound of the way rang out in his head for the third time. This time, it was as loud as a bell, causing Jianshan's soul to tremble. It was already slightly aggressive. Jianshan refused to give up. He tried everything he could to sit on the seat for the 4th time. After 3 seconds, he was pushed out by the gentle energy again. He immediately paled. The same sound rang out in his head for the 4th time. It was like a thunderclap, dealing a heavy blow to his soul. There was a tearing pain, causing his soul to be slightly injured. The further it goes, the more powerful the Tao sound will become. If I continue to use the Fortune Jade pedestal to cultivate, the next Tao sound will become even more terrifying. It will be enough to severely injure my soul or even directly disperse it. It looks like I have no hope of using the Fortune Jade pedestal. Jianshan stood nearby with a pale face as he stared at the seat silently. He sighed inside and left in despair. Jianshan stood at the entrance of the Anatta Tower as he stared at it. He had never come to the Anatta Tower this time. He only wanted to find some treasures, or the treasures the Anatta Grand Prime had left behind in the past to increase his strength. However, he had never thought that the only thing he had gained from the Anatta Tower was defeating the artifact spirit and refining the 1st floor. He had not gained anything else apart from that. The Anata Grand Prime had indeed left behind his treasures in the Anata Tower, but they had all been placed in a spatial crack on the 9th floor. With Jianshan's current strength, it was impossible for him to take them out. There are a total of 9 floors in the Anata Tower. I can only refine the first floor right now, so I can only gain basic control over the tower. I can't even use its power, Jianshan murmured. His voice was filled with helplessness. He extended his hand, and the Anata Tower immediately shrank at a visible rate. In the end, it shrank to the size of a finger and flew into Jianshan's hand. Chapter 1497. Jianshan said softly, "I've already confirmed that the artifact spirit hasn't died from the explosion of the immortal Emperor's essence blood. Since the artifact spirit is still here, I don't have the ability to break through the seal on the Anata Tower. Even if I did, I wouldn't be able to do so with my current strength. Once the seal is gone, the artifact spirit of the Anata Tower will be able to rapidly recover and grow at a rate that will far surpass mine." After a moment of thought, Jianshan took out the wooden box containing the comprehension of the laws of destruction from his space ring. With a thought, he placed the wooden box in the Anata Tower. He felt that it was safer to leave it in the Anata Tower. If he carried it with him, he was worried that something might happen one day. He still did not understand the use of the bead. Possession was only a guess between him and the sword spirits. He did not want to try out the effects of the bead because he knew that the bead would only harm him. Trying it out would be pointless. Although I can't unleash the full power of the Anata Tower right now, it's still the life-bound god artifact of the Anata Grand Prime after all. The materials used to forge it are all rare, so even if I can't unleash any of its power, just the weight of the tower is enough to smash a planet, Jianshan thought. Jianshan stared at the finger-sized tower in his hand and gradually smiled. Although he did not obtain what he wanted this time, which was rather regretful, he had obtained the Anata Tower, which made the trip worthwhile. Even though the Anata Tower was dead now, only possessing indestructible materials and terrifying weight, just the weight of the tower itself was not something a receival expert could endure. As Jianshan had refined the first floor of the Anata Tower, he had obtained the most basic control over it. As a result, the Anata Tower was as light as a feather in his hand, but once it left Jianshan's hand, it would become extremely heavy. He had no doubt that he could smash a receival expert to death with just the weight of the tower. With a thought, the Anata Tower immediately vanished from Jianshan's hand. An imprint that was identical to the Anata Tower appeared on Jianshan's hand. It was small and exquisite, growing on Jianshan's palm like a birthmark. Jianshan could have fused the Anata Tower into his soul, but before he completely refined it, he did not plan on doing so. There were just too many hidden dangers. Jianshan glanced at the plains one last time before leaving. The path out was extremely difficult as well. Jianshan had no idea how long he had walked through the hazy mist, nor did he know how many times he had been randomly teleported away. In the end, he found the way out by coincidence and made his way out of the sea of despair where he had no sense of direction at all. The hazy mist that blocked out the senses of the soul did not disperse after the Anata Tower was taken away. It continued to circulate like before. Jianshan did not remain outside the sea of despair. He immediately shot into the air, charging out of the sea realm in a single moment. With a huge splash on the surface of the sea, he had already charged into the blue sky. Afterwards, he turned into a violet streak of light and shot off into the distance. He moved extremely quickly. Blaze City, where the flame mercenaries resided, was currently bustling with activity. The streets and alleys were filled with people, and the hubbub of voices could be heard. On the wide main road, carriages filled with goods were escorted by groups of burly mercenaries, moving in and out of Blaze City in an orderly fashion. Even though mercenaries from various places had gathered in Flame City, causing the city to be filled with all sorts of people, no fights had occurred in the city. The current Flame City was no longer as simple as a base for the Flame Mercenaries. Instead, it had vaguely replaced Mercenary City, becoming the holy land of all mercenaries on the Tian-Yuan continent. Although Flame City could not be compared to Mercenary City in terms of heritage, this did not affect its supreme status in the hearts of the mercenaries on the Tian-Yuan continent. This was because the city lord was the greatest human expert, Jianchen. He was a supreme existence on the Tian-Yuan continent, a sovereign without a doubt. The vice-city lord of Flame City, Bai Lian, had become a renowned figure on the Tian-Yuan continent long ago. Even the magical beasts, the 100 races, and the 3 races of the Sea Realm had legends about her. At this moment, a violet streak of light shot through the sky above Flame City with lightning speed. It vanished in the blink of an eye, entering the city lord's estate. The violet streak of light moved just too quickly and silently. Coupled with the fact that it was daytime, only a few experts in the city sensed its arrival. Bai Hai suddenly opened his eyes in a secret room within the city lord's estate. A smear of pride appeared on his face as he murmured, "After disappearing for over a decade, my great-grandson has finally returned." In the past few years, basically the entire world has been discussing whether Class 8, Radiant Saint Masters have the ability to revive Saint weapons. I'm very curious about this secret as well. I should be able to find out the answer now. Bai Hai stood up and left the room with a smile. Brother's back. Bai Lian and Yu Yu, who were strolling in the garden, sensed Jianchen's return as soon as possible. They immediately became overjoyed. With a flash, the two of them left, hurrying over as quickly as they could. It had already been over a decade since Jianchen had last appeared. Ever since he had reached Class 8 and obtained a large pile of Saint weapons from Flame City, he had completely vanished from the sight of the people of Flame City. Even during the second invasion of the world of Forsaken Saints, he had only met Tai Ta, Poseidon, and a few other Origin Realm experts. At the same time, Dugu Feng, Yunjing, Senioren, Jetta Tai, and the others from the City Lord's estate, as well as a few other members of the upper echelon of Flame City, stopped what they were doing and immediately headed to the discussion hall to pay their respects. Chapter 1498. Saint rulers were reclusive experts that would only appear once every 100 years or even several hundred years, yet today, 2 saint rulers were like guards in Flame City. They wore sturdy tungsten armor as they respectfully knelt there. They did not even dare to breathe too loudly. If this had happened in the past, it would have been enough to shock countless people. Even when the Tian-Yuan continent faced the threat of the world of Forsaken Saints, saint rulers still possessed extraordinary statuses, whether it was the Holy Emperor or the Holy Emperor. It was basically impossible for them to kneel so willingly. Even the Holy Emperor was unable to achieve something like this. However, Jianchen possessed enough prestige to receive the worship of saint rulers. Let alone saint rulers, even the Holy Emperor who revered the strong could not help but bend his prideful knees before Jianchen, submitting to Jianchen. This was not because they did not possess any pride, but because they revered the strong. Not to mention that Jianchen was the only person since Mo Tianyun to surpass the Holy Emperor in all these years. Yang Lai, Gui Haidao, and Feng Xiaotian were not people of the Tian-Yuan continent. After coming to the Tian-Yuan continent from the Saints' world, their cultivation had fallen from the Origin realm to the Holy Emperor. Even now, they were unable to make a full recovery. As a result, the 3 of them were only half a step away from the Origin realm. They were not true Origin realm experts. "You can all rise," Jianchen gently said as he looked at the 2 rows of people kneeling beside him. Mixed emotions filled his eyes. He could not help but think of the time when he had been forced to hide in Mercenary City by saint rulers. At that time, saint rulers were unreachable, supreme existences in his eyes. He did not even have the power to fight back before saint rulers. He did not even have the ability to flee. However, he had become an existence that saint rulers could worship now, which made Jianchen sigh in amazement. Greetings! The two guards kneeling on the two sides said together. Their voices were filled with respect before slowly standing up. They stood to one side quietly, not even daring to breathe too loudly. The two saint rulers glanced at Jianchen from time to time. Their faces were filled with fanaticism. The two of them were not originally part of the Flame Mercenaries. They had only joined over a decade ago out of respect for Jianchen. Afterwards, they became the guards of the discussion hall of the city lord's estate. To them, being able to serve as guards of the discussion hall was a great honor. They took pride in the sacred duty. This was because the discussion hall was the place that decided the fate of the entire Flame Mercenaries. It was a sacred hall that could influence the entire Tianyuan continent. This was because all the important meetings of the Flame Mercenaries were held in the discussion hall, and all the information came from there. In particular, when they saw Jianchen, every single one of the guards became so excited that they could not control themselves. They had already heard of Jianchen's name. They had only seen Jianchen's statue in the past, but they had never seen him in person. Today, not only had they seen Jianchen in person, but they had even come into contact with him at such a close distance. This made them extremely excited. Ha 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 ha, great-grandson, you've been missing for over a decade. If you still hadn't returned, those two girls would have sent people to the entire continent to look for you. A burst of hearty laughter rang out. Bai Hai, dressed in a white robe, walked in with his hands behind his back. He seemed to be strolling leisurely, but every step he took covered a distance of several hundred meters. In just a few steps, he entered the conference hall from afar. Brother, you've finally returned. Jianchen. As soon as Bai Hai entered the discussion hall, Bai Lian and Yu Yu's joyful voices rang out. With a flash, the two of them charged in as quickly as they could. They were excited. Afterward, Yunjing, Senior and Wang Yifeng, Dugu Feng, Jetta Tai, and the upper echelon of the Flame Mercenaries hurried over as well. When they saw Jianchen, they all clasped their hands at Jianchen before standing to one side quietly. Jianchen smiled as he looked at these people. His smile was filled with gentleness. Great-grandson, how has the revival of the Saint Weapon been going? Basically, the entire world has been discussing this topic over the past decade. There have even been quite a few old people who have come to understand the situation, but they've all returned in disappointment. Even I'm extremely curious about this matter. I wonder if the Saint Weapon really can be revived like the legends say. I'm your great-grandfather after all, so even if you want to hide it from the entire world, you should at least tell your great-grandfather a little and satisfy his curiosity. Bai Hai chuckled. As Jianchen Sr., he obviously did not need to be as polite to Jianchen as the others. He did not need to hold back when he spoke either. Brother, where have you been over the past decade? You've made big sister Yu and I worry to death, Bai Lian grumbled as she shook Jianchen's arm. She was filled with blame and dissatisfaction. Yu stood to one side and stared at Jianchen silently. She smiled and her gaze was gentle. Tears seemed to glimmer in her eyes. Although over a decade had passed, even the weakest person present, Bai Lian, was a saint ruler. She possessed a lifespan of several thousand years, so a mere decade was not enough to leave a mark on them. Everyone was the same as before. Even Bai Lian and Yu were the same. Other than becoming more mature and steady, they had not changed much. Afterward, Jianchen chatted with everyone for a while before telling them about the secret behind the revival of the Saint Weapon. He could sense that the third battle against the world of Forsaken Saints was not far away, so there was no need to keep it a secret. Letting everyone know the result would only increase their confidence. Everyone in the discussion hall fell silent after learning about the drawbacks of the revival of the Saint Weapon. Even Bai Hai frowned and remained silent for quite some time. On the Tianyuan continent, many people would leave behind their saint weapons when they reached the end of their lifespans. Other than those who did it for their clans, even more people held on to a sliver of hope that they could be revived. Even though this hope was extremely slim, Many people would still leave behind their saint weapons without any hesitation to gamble on a second life. However, no one had thought that the saint weapon would become a puppet without a will of its own after being revived. They would be controlled by the person who revived them. If they had known that this would happen, just how many people would be willing to leave behind their saint weapons when they were about to reach the end of their lifespans and become a puppet under the control of someone else? Some experts who had reached the 9th heavenly layer did not have to leave behind their saint weapons when they were about to reach the end of their lifespans. They could also destroy their saint weapons at the last moment. After all, not everyone had a clan. There were many independent cultivators as well. Chapter 1499. If we can't survive the calamity of the world of forsaken saints, we won't have a future. In my opinion, it's not necessarily a bad thing for saint weapons to be reduced to puppets under the current circumstances. Although their strength will decrease, they'll possess an advantage that we can't possess, which is the lack of pain and fear. Even when they face death, they'll feel nothing. Puppets like these that exist like sacrificial warriors can be unimaginably useful at certain times, and in recent years, seniors Yang Lai, Feng Xiaotian, and Guihai Yidao have been teaching formations to all the Holy Emperor of the 4 races. If these formations are used by the Holy Emperor, they can trap Origin Realm experts. There are even some powerful formations that can temporarily grant them strength that far exceeds their own after paying a certain price, allowing them to unleash extremely powerful attacks. If these formations are used by the Holy Emperor puppets, it'll be perfect. The person who spoke was Dugufeng. His face was emotionless, and his voice was rather cold. It was as if his resolute face would never smile. Bai Hai's eyes immediately lit up when he heard Dugufeng's words. He said, "That's right. If the Holy Emperor ignites all of their life force to cast the formations, they won't be able to surpass the Holy Emperor in strength, but a few powerful existences can reach the peak of the Holy Emperor. Since these puppets have no consciousness, continuing to exist might be an insult to them who were renowned when they were alive. Just let them shine one last time in the next battle against the world of forsaken saints. They'll protect their homeland with our generation." Jianchen nodded silently. He sank into his thoughts. He knew long ago that Yang Lai, Guihai Yidao, and Feng Xiaotian were teaching the Holy Emperor some formations from the Saints' world to the Holy Emperor of the 4 races, and they were personally guiding the Holy Emperor through the various formations. Jianchen knew a few of the formations from the higher world. They were all sword formations he had obtained from the sword spirits. Even though the sword spirits had only taught Jianchen the weakest sword formations, they were still much more powerful than the formations Feng Xiaotian and the others had taught him. Using the sword formations required extremely great strength as well. Even with Jianchen's current strength, he was still unable to use them. Not only was his current strength lacking, but the sword formations were just too profound. He needed a certain amount of time to comprehend them. "Looks like I should go see great-grandfather Yang Lai and obtain the formations from him so that I can get the Holy Emperor puppets to use them," Jianchen thought. Afterwards, he dismissed everyone in the discussion hall. Only Bai Hai, Bai Lian Yu, and Gudufeng remained. Afterward, he took out the artifact space and let out Bai Yuntian, who had been cultivating inside. Bai Yuntian had been cultivating Radiant Saint Force in the artifact space for over a decade. Her rate of improvement had been extremely rapid. Although she was nowhere near as fast as Jianchen, she was definitely a rare sight on the Tian-Yuan continent. Now, she had reached the peak of Class 6 and was preparing to reach Class 7. Jianchen did not see newbies, Ming Dong, or Little Fatty in the discussion hall, but he did not ask about them. He directly expanded the senses of his soul, enveloping the entire city in a single moment. He even reached the secret room hidden deep underground. After failing to find the 3 of them, Jianchen continued to expand the senses of his soul without any hesitation. It enveloped the entire Tian-Yuan continent and even extended to the vast sea beyond the Tian-Yuan continent. Wild winds whistled in the sea beyond the Tian-Yuan continent. Waves surged on the surface of the sea, kicking up waves that were several dozen meters tall from time to time. At this moment, a huge sea beast moved through the wave. It moved extremely steadily, and no matter how violent the waves were, they were unable to make the sea beast sway at all. A young man in golden robes who seemed to be in his 20s reclined on the back of the huge sea beast. He held a jug of alcohol in his hand, and he would occasionally take a sip. He seemed satisfied. Beside the young man in golden robes were two burly women who seemed to be in their 20s. They knelt beside the young man in golden robes, carefully massaging his legs and back with reverence and fear. The two women's appearances were extremely ordinary. Even though they were very fearful before the golden-robed young man, they were unable to hide their valiance. Their powerful presences that belonged to saint rulers leaked out from them. The two women were clearly Class 7 magical beasts of the Magical Beast clan. Now these days are truly happy. I can go wherever I want, unlike before when I didn't dare to go to human territory and had to hide myself all the time, avoiding that old snake on the beast god continent. My life was on the line all the time. Afterwards, when I went to the sea realm with Jianshin, my life was on the line many times. I almost couldn't see the sun again, the young man murmured to himself. He drank a mouthful of alcohol as he mumbled to himself. Reminiscence filled his eyes, as well as some nostalgia. This person was none other than the golden-striped silver snake, Nubis. But I must say that my days with Jianshin have indeed been much more interesting than before. In just a few short decades, I, the great Nubis, have gone from Class 7 to Class 9. This is all because I, the great Nubis, have made an extremely wise decision back then. If I had continued to hide in the dwelling and cultivate like before, I probably wouldn't have reached Class 8, Nubis said proudly. Afterward, he glanced at the two women kneeling beside him and sniggered. Do you know who the great Nubis, Jianshin, is? We do, of course we do. The two of us have heard of Sovereign Jianshin's name and feel great admiration for him. It's just that we've never personally seen Sovereign Jianshin, so we've always felt regret, the two burly women replied in a hurry as deep admiration filled their eyes. Since you've become my servants, the great Nubis, I, the great Nubis, will naturally fulfill your tiny wish. In the future, I'll obviously give you a chance to personally see my brother. Nubis revealed a sliver of pride. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a voice seemed to ring out from nowhere, directly ringing out in Nubis's head. Nubis, return to Flame City immediately. Nubis was stunned. In the next moment, his eyes lit up. Without any hesitation, he immediately ripped open a space gate and left. You two return to the island first and wait. Nubis's voice only rang out slowly the moment he stepped through the space gate. Flame City. Not only did Jianshin find Nubis who was still overseas through the senses of his soul, but he also discovered where Ming Dong and Little Fatty were. His heart immediately sank. Chapter 1500. Jianshin saw everything in Longevity Valley clearly with the senses of his soul. The heavy atmosphere of sorrow that permeated the valley made Jianshin fall silent. At that moment, Jianshin could not help but feel a pang of pain in his heart. Some sorrow appeared on his face as well. Jianshin stood silently in the discussion hall. Although he was currently in Flame City, his heart had already flown to Longevity Valley 1,000,000 kilometers away. In the end, he let out a sigh. Outside Flame City, space suddenly twisted violently. It ripped open and a colorful space gate appeared. The golden-robed Nubis walked out leisurely. With a flash, he vanished as if he had teleported. 2 seconds later, Nubis appeared in the city lord's estate. He swaggered into the majestic discussion hall in the center of the estate. The guards along the way all bowed respectfully. Jianshin, you've finally returned after disappearing for over a decade. I, the great Nubis, have already gotten used to being with you. I really haven't gotten used to the time you've been gone for over a decade, the great Newbies sighed. Newbies laughed aloud as soon as he entered the discussion hall. Jianshan's return made him happy from the bottom of his heart. This was because it was just as he had said. The years he spent with Jianshan had been the most exciting period of his life. Along the way, there had always been shocking matters. Now that his days had suddenly become peaceful, Newbies found it rather difficult to get used to the way he used to when he had already fallen in love with his old life. With Newbies' return, Jianshan suppressed his pain and returned to normal very soon. He glanced past the people who were still in the discussion hall and said, "I've called you all here this time because I want to see if any of you have the fortune to obtain a great fortuitous encounter. Don't resist. I'll take you to another world." With that, the Anata Tower, which was only the size of a finger, appeared in Jianshan's hand. It rapidly expanded under Jianshan's control, becoming a tower over 10 meters tall in the blink of an eye. Fortunately, the discussion hall was over 20 meters tall, so there was no need to worry about the top of the tower piercing through the roof. Jianshan had not completely refined the Anata Tower. As a result, he was unable to control many of the tower's abilities. He obviously could not make the Anata Tower hover in the air by itself after it had lost its artifact spirit. As a result, he could only place the tower on the ground. Bang! As soon as the damaged Anata Tower landed on the ground, it produced a heavy thud. The ground shook violently, and not only did the tremors affect Flame City, but the shock waves rapidly expanded in all directions. In the end, they reached several 100,000 kilometers away, causing a great earthquake that had not happened in the past century to occur across a small portion of the Tianyuan continent. The discussion hall of Flame City became covered in cracks in a single moment. Even though a sliver of Shao Jin's energy had been fused into the discussion hall, making it extremely tough where even the Holy Emperor would not be able to destroy it, it was as fragile as tofu before the tremors from the Anata Tower. When the Anata Tower landed on the ground, it did not just cause a rumble and an earthquake. The ground where the Anata Tower stood rapidly sank. The Anata Tower, which was over 10 meters tall, sank into the ground as well. The Anata Tower used its own weight to crush the ground, so it sank extremely quickly. In just a few seconds, the entire Anata Tower had basically sunk into the ground. Only a third of its tip remained above the ground. Jianshan immediately slapped his head when he saw this. He had forgotten that the Anata Tower could not leave his hand. If he held it, the Anata Tower would be as light as a feather, but once it left his hand, the Anata Tower's weight would be completely unleashed. Even if he did not use any of the Anata Tower's power, he would be able to pierce through a star with just its weight. Without any hesitation, Jianshan arrived at the tip of the Anata Tower that was about to disappear into the horizon in a flash. He gently pressed his hand against the top of the tower. The moment Jianshan pressed his hand against the Anata Tower, the tower immediately stopped sinking. It then rapidly shrank, and in just a few seconds, the Anata Tower had shrunk to the size of a finger. Jianshan held it in his hand, leaving behind a pit over a dozen meters deep. "Brother, look at you! You've destroyed the discussion hall. What kind of treasure is this?" Bai Lian grumbled as she stared at Jianshan's hand that held the Anata Tower. Her eyes were filled with great curiosity. Jianshan bitterly smiled as he looked at the ruined discussion hall. He said, "This treasure is far too heavy. We can't fit it here. Looks like we need to find another place." Afterwards, Jianshan left Flame City with the others in search of a sturdy place to place the Anata Tower. Naturally, the people of Flame City would deal with the damaged discussion hall. Jianshan ignored the earthquake that affected a small portion of the Tianyuan continent. There was a mountain range near Flame City. The mountain range was originally rich in tungsten alloy and had once attracted the attention of the entire Tianyuan continent. However, as the metallic spirit in the mine matured and turned into Shao Jin and left, the tungsten alloy mine completely lost its original value. It was reduced to a mountain range that could not be any more ordinary. Not a single bit of tungsten alloy could be found there. There was a deep gorge in the depths of the mountain range. Very few people knew that even though the mountain range had been reduced to an ordinary mountain range, the ground at the bottom of the gorge was not as loose as other places. Instead, it was extremely tough. At this moment, Jianchen, Bai Yuntian, Bai Hai, Bai Lian, Yu, Dugufeng, and Nubis all stood at the bottom of the gorge. Before them was a 3,000-meter-tall tower. The tower was covered in sword slashes, and each slash flickered with light as they radiated with threatening sword qi. Above the ancient pagoda, there was a huge barrier that covered the entire mountain range and concealed the existence of the ancient pagoda. Chapter 1501. Before the Anata Tower, Nubis, Bai Hai, Dugufeng, Yu, Bai Lian, and so on were all stern. The Anata Tower before them was heavily damaged. Even the main entrance had been destroyed, making it seem like an abandoned tower, but they still felt an invisible pressure from it. The pressure was so great that it made them feel like they were tiny ants before the boundless sky. They were the tiny ants, and the broken ancient pagoda was the boundless sky. Jianchen, where did you find this treasure? It's clearly damaged, but when I stand before it, I actually feel insignificant from the depths of my soul. And just a single glance at the sword slashes on the tower is enough to make me, the great Jianchen, shiver. I'm a mighty Class 9 magical beast, equivalent to the Holy Emperor of humans. I'm one of the existences that stand at the apex of the world, yet a single glance is enough to make a Holy Emperor shiver. I, the great Nubis, am unable to imagine just how extraordinary this tower is. Nubis said as he glanced past the sword slashes on the tower from time to time. He was extremely stern. Jianchen raised his head and looked at the Anata Tower. He smiled and said, "This tower is indeed extraordinary. Let's go. I'll take you in. There's a great fortuitous encounter inside. Whether you can obtain it will be up to fate." Jianchen did not explain too much about the Anata Tower. He did not even tell them its name. It was not because he did not trust them, but because the Anata Tower was connected to the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. If the Anata Tower was leaked in the Saints' world in the future, it would lead to disaster for them. Even though not everyone could obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy, just the Anata Tower was enough to create a storm of blood in the Saints' world. After all, the Anata Tower was the famed treasure of the Anata Grand Prime of the Saints' world. Jianchen believed that the Anata Tower was no weaker than the Azulite swords when they were at their peak. Even peak Grand Primes would come to fight over such a powerful god artifact. Afterwards, Jianchen took everyone to the 9th floor of the Anata Tower. When Nubis and the others saw the majestic projection of the heavenly palace of Bishing, they were all stunned. Not only was the heavenly palace of Bishing much larger than any divine hall they had ever seen, but they could also sense an indescribable feeling from it. This was the feeling of the power of laws. The projection of the heavenly palace of Bishing had also fused with laws. This divine hall is clearly illusionary, but when I walk on it, it's no different from walking on solid ground. It feels exactly the same. This is definitely not an ability possessed by the Holy Emperor. Only existences that have surpassed the Holy Emperor can achieve something like this. Bai Hai sighed in amazement. He carefully studied the heavenly palace of Bishing and immediately became shocked. This was because he discovered that even if he used his full strength as the Holy Emperor, he would not necessarily be able to destroy the illusionary palace. That was not all. Even the space within the damaged tower was countless times tougher than on the Tianyuan continent. Even if peak experts like the Holy Emperor used their full strength, they would not be able to cause the space there to ripple at all. This tower is not simple at all. It must have been created by a peak origin realm expert at the very least, and looking at how realistic the projection is, even peak origin realm experts probably wouldn't have the ability to create something like this. It's extremely likely that it's a treasure used by godhood experts. Bai Hai was shocked, but he was also very curious. He wondered where Jianchen had found such a powerful tower. Everyone moved through the illusionary heavenly palace of Bisheng. Along the way, Bai Hai and the others who had come here for the first time looked around curiously. Although the heavenly palace of Bisheng was illusionary, allowing them to see the inside of the palace from the outside, they could only see a small portion of it. Most of the palace was hazy, as if it was shrouded by mist. It was impossible to see clearly, but that did not stop their curiosity at all. In the end, Jianchen brought them to the fortune jade seat. He pointed at the disc-sized fortune jade and said to them, "The great fortune I'm talking about is on these seats. Take turns sitting on them. It'll be up to your luck to see if you can obtain the great fortune." Everyone was looking at the white jade platform, which was only the size of a millstone. They were all very confused. Finally, Bai Lian couldn't help but ask, "Brother, what kind of creation is this? Why is it so mysterious?" Jianchen immediately became stern. He said sternly, "Don't ask. Don't know too much about this place. Although I know you won't divulge it, I'm just afraid that in the future, there will be experts who will use various abilities to learn about this place from you. That will be a disaster for all of us." Everyone was shocked when they heard that. They all looked at Jianchen in disbelief and shock. They had all been stunned by Jianchen's words. However, they all understood that this place was extraordinary from Jianchen's words. After a discussion, they decided to let Bai Yuntian sit on the seat first because she was the only one who had the right to do so out of everyone present. Bai Yuntian tried her best to avoid it, but in the end, she had no choice but to follow everyone's decision. She became the first person to sit on the fortune jade seat. The moment Bai Yuntian sat on the stone seat, Jianchen stared at her. He felt rather nervous. He felt very conflicted inside. He hoped that Bai Yuntian could obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy, but at the same time, he did not want her to obtain it. This was because he understood that once Bai Yuntian obtained the legacy, she would embark on a completely different path. She would definitely experience many killings and dangers along the way. As a result, Bai Yuntian would no longer be able to live as peacefully as before. He hoped that Bai Yuntian could become powerful so that she could live a long life. Even if she encountered some danger, she would be able to protect herself. At the same time, he hoped that Bai Yuntian would be able to live a carefree life. He did not want Bai Yuntian to become involved in too much killing. Chapter 1502. Under Jianchen's nervous gaze, he finally sensed the familiar and tremendous power surge out of the seat again after a few seconds. It pushed Bai Yuntian off the seat. Jianchen obviously knew that Bai Yuntian was not fated to be with the Anata Grand Prime after experiencing this several times. She was unable to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy, which relieved him slightly as well as made him feel slightly disappointed. Bai Yuntian opened her eyes after being pushed off the seat. She immediately looked around cautiously, but when she discovered that there was no one else in the surroundings aside from Jianchen and the others, she became surprised and doubtful. "Xianger, I think I heard someone talking earlier," Bai Yuntian asked Jianchen. Jianchen smiled and said, "Mother, that was the voice of a supreme senior from many years ago. In reality, this senior has already been dead for many years, but before he died, he left his legacy in the fortune jade seat. Only those who are fated can obtain it." Bai Yuntian nodded in understanding. She then said to Bai Hai, "Great-grandfather, you should go try as well. See if you can obtain this senior's legacy." Bai Hai chuckled aloud. He glanced at Bai Yuntian, Bai Lian, and Jianchen gently. His eyes were filled with the affection of a senior for his juniors. He said, "How can I, as a senior, walk before you juniors when there's an opportunity to obtain the legacy of a supreme senior right before us? Great-grandson Jianchen's talent is outstanding, and his cultivation speed is astonishing. He has even become the greatest human expert now, so I think he probably doesn't care about this legacy at all. Lian come, go first. Let's see if you're fated to be with this supreme senior." Great-grandfather, Sister Yu is brother's fiancée, so she should go first. If Yu doesn't try, how can it be my turn? Bai Lian pouted and said rather unhappily. Yu stood there gracefully in her white dress. She smiled faintly, making her seem noble and elegant. She said gently, Sister Bai Lian, Yu cultivates Fairy Haoyue's cultivation method. Although it might not be as powerful as this Supreme Senior, it's still quite extraordinary. Only your cultivation method is rather ordinary, so you should go first. Bai Lian hesitated. In her heart, she hoped that Yu could obtain this Supreme Senior's cultivation method. This was not only because of how close she was with Yu, but more importantly, Yu was her brother's fiancé. Since her brother was the one who found the legacy, Yu naturally had to be ranked before her. Seeing how Bai Lian was still hesitating, Jianshan said, Lian go try. This Supreme Senior's legacy isn't that easy to obtain. It doesn't matter who goes first because it's very likely that no one here will be able to obtain it. Alright, since you've asked, I'll sit on it. Bai Lian smiled sweetly and sat down cross-legged on the Fortune Divine Jade pedestal. A few seconds later, the powerful and gentle force appeared once again, pushing Bai Lian off the platform. Bai Lian opened her eyes and said rather helplessly, Brother, I'm not fated to meet this senior either. But is this senior a human or a beast, or a man or a woman? Why do I feel like this senior's voice is strange? It sounds like everything. That's the voice of the way. It contains everything in the world, so it's whatever you think it is, Jianshan explained with a smile. He looked at Bai Lian with some concern. Afterwards, Bai Hai, Dugufeng, and newbies all sat on the jade platform, but the outcome was the same as before. None of them had the right to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. In the end, Jianshan also let Yu try, but she was still unable to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's recognition. Even though this was something that Jianshan had expected, he still could not help but sigh when the truth was right before him. Reaching the 80th layer of comprehension of laws is enough to become a peak Grand Prime, while the Anata Grand Prime has already comprehended the laws of fire, creation, and destruction to the limit of 100. The Sword Spirits once said that the Anata Grand Prime was so powerful that she could rank within the top 3 in the Saints' world. Only the greatest expert in the Saints' world, the Grand Prime of the Warring Gods, who was even more powerful than the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt, could surpass the Anata Grand Prime. It's obviously not easy to obtain the legacy of such a stunning expert. Perhaps only by meeting certain conditions can one obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy, Jianshan thought before leaving the Anata Tower with everyone. Outside the Anata Tower, Jianshan pressed his hand against the huge Anata Tower and controlled it to shrink back to the size of a finger before disappearing into his hand. Afterward, he looked at everyone and said, You can go back first. I need to go to Longevity Valley immediately. Xiao Fatty's father has passed away. Jianshan, let me go with you. Yu looked at Jianshan gently and said softly. Jianshan nodded. He did not turn her down. He had always felt like he owed Yu. In the imperial family of the Kingdom of Jessen, many princes and princesses from the same generation as Yu had already gotten married and had children many years ago. Some of them even had grandchildren. Only Yu remained unmarried. Newbies opened his mouth. Originally, he wanted to go to Longevity Valley with Jianshan, but when he heard Yu's words, he immediately dismissed that thought. He chuckled, Jianshan, I, the great Newbies, am going to play with the 2 maidservants I just took in. I'll be going first. With that, Newbies left. Afterwards, Bai Lian, Dugufeng, and Bai Hai returned to Flame City after bidding farewell to Jianshan. Bai Yuntian returned to the artifact space to continue cultivating. In the blink of an eye, only Jianshan and Yu remained at the bottom of the cliff. Let's go as well. Alright. A streak of violet light shot into the sky from the bottom of the cliff. It shot through the air with lightning speed before vanishing into the horizon. It moved extremely quickly. Within the dazzling violet light was a huge violet sword that was 20 meters long. At this moment, Jianshan gently hugged Yu Yu's slender breasts to keep Yu Yu on the Ziying sword so that she would not fall. The Ziying sword moved extremely quickly. The surroundings were a blur, impossible to see clearly with the naked eye. Even though she could see the scenery along the way clearly, Yu Yu had no interest in appreciating it at all. She closed her eyes with a blissful smile on her face as she leaned her head against Jianshan's chest. Chapter 1503. Jianshan hugged Yu Yu gently as he sniffed the faint fragrance coming from Yu Yu. He said softly, It's been hard on you these past few years. I've made you wait for me for so long. Do you blame me? Yu Yu raised her head and looked at Jianshan affectionately with her limpid eyes. Her gaze was filled with gentleness as she said softly, Jianshan, I've never blamed you, because I know that you've been through a lot these past few years. Or rather, ever since you left Kargath Academy you've been through a lot. For you to have your current achievements you must have sacrificed a lot these past few years, even almost sacrificing your own life. As your fiancé, I can only watch as you work hard outside without being able to help you at all. What do I have to complain about? Jianshan, do you know? Actually, in Yu's heart, I've always been proud to be your wife, even though I'm still your fiancé. You're extremely outstanding, extremely powerful. You possess an unprecedented cultivation talent. Who knows how many peerless beauties have fallen for you in this world? Yu is very glad that Imperial Father arranged this marriage for the two of us. Yu looked at Jianshan in a daze. Not only was her voice pleasant, it was also extremely gentle. Afterwards, she stood on the Ziying sword and gently turned around. She hugged Jianshan tightly with her arms, pressing her entire body into Jianshan's embrace. She said, Jianshan, you once promised Yu that you would marry Yu. Do you still remember? Have you ever forgotten? Of course I remember. How could I forget something like that? Only Yu apart from you, I, Jianshan, have other women. Jianshan said softly. He seemed to have thought of something as a complicated expression appeared on his face. Yu smiled faintly and said, Jianshan, your father has 4 wives. Do you know how many consorts my father has? Jianshan shook his head. Although he was a citizen of the Kingdom of Jessen and was also the imperial protector of the Kingdom of Jessen, he knew nothing about the Kingdom of Jessen's imperial family. He did not even know how many princesses and princes the king of the Kingdom of Jessen had. Yu laughed when she saw the blank expression on Jianshan's face. She said coquettishly, You are the imperial protector, but you don't even know this. Let me tell you. My father has 28 consorts in total. My mother is only one of them. Yu's expression darkened when she mentioned her mother. Her mother had passed away when she was just born. If it were not for the portrait, Yu probably would not even know what her mother looked like. Which of those powerful men doesn't have multiple wives? Your father is like that, and so is my father. You, on the other hand, are more outstanding than your father and my father. Who knows how many women in the world have fallen in love with you? Yu has long understood that you are not someone that any woman can monopolize. Therefore, Yu does not care how many women you have. Yu continued speaking in a very gentle and considerate tone. What if I tell you that I already have a child? Jianshan said with some guilt. Even his parents did not know about Shangguan Aojian. The first person he told was Yu. Yu gently trembled. She stared at Jianshan in some surprise. After a moment of silence, she said with a trembling voice, Jianshan, is that true? It's true. I haven't seen him in over a decade now. He should have grown up by now, Jianshan sighed softly. He could not help but think of Shangguan Aojian on 3 Saint Island. He also felt rather guilty because he knew that he was not a good father. He had spent very little time with Shangguan Aojian in the past few years. He could even count the number of times he had spent with Shangguan Aojian. Once this is over, I'll go to 3 Saint Island and stay there until the day the world of Forsaken Saints invades, Jianchen thought. However, before that, he had to pay a visit to the Huang family because Huang Luan was there. Although I don't know who that person is, I believe that she's no ordinary woman. Jianchen, if there's an opportunity in the future, can you take me to see your child? Yu asked. Her gentle voice was very calm and composed, but Jianchen could still sense the faint disappointment in Yu's voice. Jianchen nodded. The two of them remained silent for the rest of the journey. Even though Longevity Valley was 1,000,000 kilometers away from Flame City, they crossed the distance very quickly with the speed of the Ziying sword. Longevity Valley was located at the edge of the Cross Mountain Range. Jianchen stopped at the entrance of the valley on the Ziying sword before walking in with Yu. Many years had passed, but Longevity Valley remained the same as before. It did not seem to have changed at all. Even when weeds grew, they would be cut down by the villagers as soon as possible. In the past, the atmosphere in Longevity Valley was peaceful, giving people the feeling that it was a paradise. However, the valley was covered in white cloth today. Basically, every household hung a snow-white cloth in front of their house according to the local customs. There was also a white flower that gave off a faint, bitter smell. The entire valley was filled with sorrow. Jianchen and Yu entered the village of Longevity Valley. They found the sorrowful little fatty in mourning clothes in the center of the village. He knelt before a coffin as he remained motionless like a statue. Beside him, his mother sat on the ground with swollen eyes. Her face was filled with deep sorrow. She seemed to have lost her soul, as if she had already lost it. Jianchen stared at the coffin with some sorrow. His mood became even heavier after entering Longevity Valley. He knew that the person lying in the coffin was Uncle Xiaomi, who had once saved his life. Xiaomi was born with an incomplete soul, which was why he could not break through to Saint Ruler. He only had a lifespan of 1,000 years. Now, Uncle Xiaomi had reached the end of his lifespan. He had died from exhaustion. Even 10,000-year-old, 100,000-year-old, or million-year-old heavenly resources could not change his fate. These 100,000-year-old and million-year-old heavenly resources could change a person completely. They could turn a cripple who could not cultivate saint force into a prodigy in a short amount of time. They could even bring the dead back to life. As long as the person still had a single breath left in them, they could be revived in the shortest amount of time. However, no matter how heaven-defying these heavenly resources were, they could not give a person another soul. Even Jianchen had not come across heavenly resources that could give a person another soul in the Xianhuang microcosm. Quite a few villagers in the surroundings recognized Jianchen. They all nodded and greeted Jianchen. On the day of Uncle Xiaomi's death, all the villagers in Longevity Valley felt very sad. No one was willing to say too much, only expressing their greetings with their gazes or nods. Jianchen passed through the crowd and directly arrived before Uncle Xiaomi's coffin. He stared at the coffin silently for quite a while before bowing deeply. Jianchen's heart was filled with indescribable bitterness. He was a Class 9 Radiant Saint Master. Not only could he revive saint weapons, but he could also bring people back to life. As long as the soul was not destroyed and the soul did not disperse, Jianchen could even revive the dead Holy Emperor. However, there was nothing Jianchen could do about Uncle Xiaomi's death. Chapter 1504. Longevity Valley was especially lively today, but it was not a hubbub of people or laughter. Instead, it was the most crowded day in the past several hundred years or even over 1,000 years. Not only did all the villagers come to send off Uncle Xiaomi, but there were also many outsiders who did not belong to Longevity Valley. Other than Jianchen and Jianchen, there were also the instance dungeon masters of the Bloodsword sect, the 4 protectors, and the various elders. The strongest instance dungeon master, Jiang Wang, had become the Holy Emperor with Jianchen's assistance over a decade ago. The weakest of the others were saint rulers and holy emperors. The people of the Bloodsword sect still wore red robes, as if they had been dyed red with blood. They did their best to conceal their vile presence, making themselves seem more ordinary as they arrived in Longevity Valley with an extremely low profile. After bowing to Jianchen politely, they stood behind Jianchen quietly. All of them stared at Uncle Xiaomi's coffin with mixed feelings. There was sorrow, pity, gentle sighs, and some helplessness. Before Jianchen had become the sect master of the Bloodsword sect, the position had always been held by Houston. Ever since Houston had secluded himself in Longevity Valley 1,000 years ago and stopped participating in the conflicts of the Tianyuan continent, Xiaomi had taken over the management of the Bloodsword sect. He had even passed on secret orders for Houston from time to time. As a result, although Xiaomi was not very powerful, only a Heaven Saint Master, his status in the sect was rather special. As a result, basically all the upper echelon of the Bloodsword sect had come out now that Uncle Xiaomi had passed away. They had all come to send him off. Now the only person missing from Longevity Valley was Xiaomi's father, Houston. Houston had vanished from the Tianyuan continent many years ago. Even when Xiaomi passed away today, Houston was nowhere to be seen. Jianchen had also searched the entire world with the senses of his soul. Not only had he searched every inch of the continent, but he had also searched through the territories of the other three races. However, he still failed to find Houston. Ming Dong returned from the forest in the distance. Behind him was a black bear the size of a small mountain. Right now, he seemed extremely simple, just like an ordinary person. He did not have the demeanor of a supreme expert at all. His white clothes were stained with specks of dust, as well as specks of green from the grass in the forest. Ming Dong dragged the huge black bear into the village. The bear's huge body rubbed against the ground, leaving behind a long trail. Soon after, Ming Dong dismembered the bear and removed its monster core. He cut the bear's meat into large pieces and gave them to the villagers in charge of cooking in Longevity Valley. Most of the villagers in Longevity Valley were ordinary people. They ate 3 meals a day. In the past, there would be some villagers who cultivated Saint Force and possessed a certain level of strength who would go out to hunt, providing the village with meat. Ever since Ming Dong had arrived with Little Fatty, he had been in charge of all the hunting. He had been in charge of all the meat the villagers needed. After dealing with the black bear, Ming Dong arrived before Jianchen and said, "Jianchen, Class 7, Radiant Saint Masters have the ability to bring people back from the dead. You've already surpassed Class 7, so do you have a way to revive Uncle Xiaomi?" Jianchen shook his head powerlessly. He stared at Uncle Xiaomi's coffin silently and sighed gently. Uncle Xiaomi's soul is incomplete. This is an innate deficiency. Anything related to the soul is the most complicated. Although I've become a Class 9, Radiant Saint Master now, I still don't have the ability to make Uncle Xiaomi regrow a soul. At the same time, although Radiant Saint Masters can bring people back from the dead, there's a condition. Only when the soul is complete or when the soul of the dead is not completely destroyed can they be revived. If the soul of the dead is completely destroyed, they won't be able to be revived even if they're only a saint ruler. Ming Dong's sliver of hope shattered after hearing Jianchen's explanation. Although he was not particularly familiar with Xiaomi, Xiaomi was Xiao Tianyu's father after all. Ming Dong did not feel good when he saw Xiao Tianyu in such grief. "Jianchen, can you find my grandfather?" Xiao Tianyu finally spoke. He looked at Jianchen with some hope in his eyes as undisguised grief filled his face. On the important day of Xiaomi's death, Houston could not be absent. Not only did Little Fatty hope that Houston could return, but all the villagers in Longevity Valley also hoped that the village chief could return. Jianchen shook his head once again. He had no idea whether Uncle Xiao had gone to some secret place to cultivate or whether his presence had been concealed by Amigami. He searched through all the continents of the 4 races with the senses of his returnant soul, but he failed to find any traces of Uncle Xiao even in a few uninhabited regions and danger zones of the Tianyuan continent. Jianchen did not even miss the death nest. However, he only found Lankiros and Kaiser hiding there, the two former rulers of the beast god continent. But the death nest is rather strange. All the vengeful spirits there seem to have vanished. Is this the handiwork of Lankiros and Kaiser? But with their holy emperor's strength, they really do have the ability to do something like that, thought Jianchen. However, he did not pay too much attention to it. What truly caught his attention in the death nest was the blood-red skeleton he had seen before. The blood-red skeleton did not escape the senses of Jianchen's soul. It sat in the very depths of the death nest silently as a dense, red mist enveloped it. It seemed to have fallen asleep. When they fought for the saint's fruit, Jianchen felt that the blood-red skeleton was undefeatable. It had already surpassed the holy emperor's strength and was unfathomable. Now, Jianchen discovered that the skeleton's strength was only at late receival. It was on par with Ku Mu, whom he had slain in the tunnel. According to local customs, Uncle Xiao Mi's funeral lasted for 7 days. During those 7 days, no one saw Uncle Xiao Mi return. In the end, Uncle Xiao Mi was buried on a small hill near Longevity Valley. Beside Uncle Xiao Mi's tombstone was an ancient tomb that had existed for 1,000 years. It belonged to Uncle Xiao Mi's wife, Xiao Mi's mother. Uncle Xiao Mi's burial place was chosen to be next to his mother, whom he had never seen before. After the funeral, the people of the Blood Sword sect bid farewell to Jianchen. They left Longevity Valley under the lead of Jiang Wang, while Jianchen and Ming Dong remained. They did not choose to leave immediately. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed since Uncle Xiao Mi's burial. During those 3 days, the pain in Xiao Tianyu's heart gradually faded, and he slowly returned to how he used to be. Only Xiao Tianyu's mother remained depressed. She washed her face with tears. Today, Jianchen left Longevity Valley with Ming Dong and Xiao Tianyu. He found a suitable location in the depths of the Cross Mountains and released the Anata Tower. Afterward, he took the two of them to the 9th floor to see if they were fated to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. Chapter 1505. On the 9th floor, the illusionary heavenly palace of Bishing shone with dazzling, golden light, illuminating the surroundings, enveloping a small portion of the 9th floor. Even from extremely far away, the dazzling light from the heavenly palace of Bishing could be seen. The heavenly palace of Bishing was the residence of the Anata Grand Prime, a peak expert of the higher world. Even in the saints' world, it was renowned. It was so majestic that no divine hall on the Tian Yuan continent could compare to it. Anyone who stood before the heavenly palace of Bishing for the first time would be deeply stunned by its majesty and grandeur. At this moment, Ming Dong and Xiao Tianyu stood before the illusionary heavenly palace of Bishing. They stared at the palace blankly as shock filled their faces. In their eyes, the heavenly palace of Bishing did not seem to be just a palace. Instead, it seemed to be the sky that loomed over them. Jianchen, is this divine hall real or fake? With my strength as the holy emperor, I actually feel like I'm as weak as an ant before this divine hall. The presence from this divine hall is just too powerful. It's almost suffocating. Ming Dong was the first to return to his senses after quite a while. He stared at the heavenly palace of Bishing and sighed in amazement. In the past, Ming Dong's strength had reached the level of a holy emperor through Jianchen's violet cloud peaches. In the following decade or so, Ming Dong had consumed the various heavenly resources from the Xian Huang microcosm that Jianchen had left for him, breaking through once again. He had become a holy emperor now. It's both real and fake. Let's go in with me. There's a Supreme Senior's legacy in there. Whether you can obtain it or not will depend on fate. Don't ask too much about the matters here. With that, Jianchen entered the illusionary heavenly palace of Bishing first. A sliver of surprise immediately appeared in Ming Dong and Xiao Tianyu's eyes when they saw Jianchen step on the illusionary steps like they were real. Afterwards, the two of them followed behind Jianchen out of curiosity, setting foot on the steps as well. Jianshan brought Ming Dong and Xiao Tianyu to the fortune jade seat with great familiarity. After giving them some instructions, he got the two of them to sit on the seat. "I'm already a holy emperor now, while you're still a holy emperor. You should receive the legacy first," Ming Dong said to Xiao Tianyu. Xiao Tianyu hesitated, but he did not decline in the end. He directly made his way onto the seat and sat down. Jianshan stared at Xiao Tianyu. He knew that he was not fated to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy, so he naturally hoped that one of his friends would be fated to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. He had a sliver of selfishness in his heart. He did not wish for such a great fortuitous encounter to end up in the hands of an outsider. A few seconds later, the familiar and tremendous power surged out from the fortune jade seat again, pushing Little Fatty off. Jianshan sighed gently. Little Fatty's talent was rare, yet even he did not have the right to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. He really had no idea what kind of conditions were needed to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. Perhaps people like that only existed in the saints' world. It was impossible for them to be born in a lower world. Now, it was Ming Dong's turn to try. He sat down on the fortune jade seat like Little Fatty and closed his eyes. He used his mind to sense the mysteries within the seat. Jianshan no longer held any hope now. He knew that perhaps no one in the lower world had the right to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. Only the prodigies of the saints' world would meet the requirement. His thoughts of leaving the Anata Grand Prime's legacy to someone close to him were destined to fail. As expected, a few seconds later, the extremely familiar, gentle power surged out from the fortune jade seat again. Jianshan had expected this outcome long ago, so he was not surprised at all. He knew that Jianshan would be pushed off the fortune jade seat in the next moment. But very soon, Jianshan's eyes suddenly narrowed. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Ming Dong, who remained seated on the fortune jade seat in surprise. His expression finally changed at that moment. The tremendous, gentle power did not push Ming Dong off the fortune jade seat like Jianshan had imagined. Instead, it wrapped around Ming Dong like a cocoon. At the same time, the heavenly palace of Bishing began to gently tremble. The illusory palace became rather blurry at that moment, but an extremely bright light shone from it. The light was as dazzling as the sun, illuminating the entire 9th floor with golden light. Jianshan could not help but close his eyes. The golden light had come and gone quickly. When Jianshan sensed the golden light disperse, he felt a sense of emptiness below his feet. Before he could react, he felt a sense of weightlessness. He fell to the ground freely, falling from the air. Jianshan immediately controlled his body to hover in the air. When he opened his eyes, he was immediately stunned. This was because the heavenly palace of Bishing was nowhere to be seen. Only the stone tablet that represented him, refining the 1st floor, remained where it used to be. The entire heavenly palace of Bishing seemed to have vanished into thin air. Jianshan's expression became extremely ugly, because the heavenly palace of Bishing was not the only thing that had vanished. Ming Dong had vanished from the 9th floor with the projection of the heavenly palace of Bishing. "Where's Ming Dong? Jianshan, where's Ming Dong?" Xiao Tianyu cried out from beside Jianshan. He looked around as he became slightly worried. Jianshan's face sank. His soul immediately fused with the Anata Tower, carefully searching through every inch of the 9th floor in an attempt to find any traces of Ming Dong. However, he was disappointed in the end. Ming Dong seemed to have left the Anata Tower. He was nowhere to be found. After quite a while of silence, Jianshan said slowly, "It looks like Ming Dong is fated to meet that senior. He has obtained the senior's recognition and has been taken away." Xiao Tianyu let out a sigh of relief and said, "Jianshan, do you know where Ming Dong is? Let's go find him." Jianshan sighed and shook his head gently. His face was bitter. He had already realized that it was extremely likely that Ming Dong had been taken to the saint's world by the power of the fortune jade seat. He was no longer in this world. He had no idea whether to rejoice or worry over this. Chapter 1506. Little Fatty, let's go. As for Ming Dong, we probably won't be able to find him anytime soon. We might meet again in the future, Jianchen said. He was rather gloomy. He had never thought that the fortune jade pedestal and the heavenly palace of Bisheng could actually teleport people. If he had known earlier, Jianchen would not have been in such a hurry to find a successor for the Anata Grand Prime's legacy. Although he had always hoped that the Anata Grand Prime's legacy could be obtained by someone close to him and not fall into the hands of an outsider, he did not want Ming Dong to leave this world and be teleported to the saint's world alone. This was because the Anata Grand Prime was already dead. Even if Ming Dong obtained the legacy, he would not be able to obtain the Anata Grand Prime's protection. At the same time, there were many people who desired the legacy in the saint's world. If news of Ming Dong obtaining the legacy leaked out, there would probably be no place for him in the entire saint's world. In short, if the Anata Grand Prime's legacy was on the Tian Yuan continent, Jianchen could still provide protection with his current strength. However, if it happened in the saint's world, there was nothing Jianchen could do. Jianchen left the Anata Tower with Little Fatty. After stowing the tower away, he returned to Longevity Valley. In Longevity Valley, the sorrow brought by Xiaomi's death had been greatly diluted. The villagers who had lived there for generations gradually returned to their former lives. However, there were still some people who were rather uncomfortable without Xiaomi, which led to some of the villagers becoming rather silent. Yu remained by Little Fatty's mother's side to comfort her. During the few days she had spent in Longevity Valley, the villagers gradually learned about her identity. Perhaps the villagers who had lived there for generations did not know the identity of a princess, but all they needed to know was that she was Jianchen's fiancée. She was warmly welcomed by all the villagers. Jianchen did not stay in Longevity Valley for long. After he returned to Longevity Valley with Little Fatty, he pulled Yu to Uncle Xiaomi's grave to pay his respects. Then, he bid farewell to the villagers of Longevity Valley. Jianchen, your Miss Yu is so beautiful. I, Eru, have never seen a girl as beautiful as you. You must treat her well. Don't let her down. Jianchen, even though you weren't born and raised in Longevity Valley, the people here have long treated you as one of their own. When you and Yu get married, you must remember to invite everyone to your wedding banquet. Uncle Han is right. Jianchen, when you and Yu get married, you must definitely invite everyone to your wedding banquet. Right, I heard from Little Fatty that you created some city in the outside world, and it's very famous. It seems to be very impressive. Don't tell me that you and Yu are getting married in that city? When the time comes, you must remember us from Longevity Valley and invite everyone to your wedding banquet. At the same time, let us all see just how big that city you created in the outside world is, and which one is bigger compared to our Longevity Valley. Before leaving, the villagers of Longevity Valley all came to chat with Jianchen. In order to send Jianchen off, many people talked about Jianchen and Yu's wedding. Yu's face blushed a little after being talked about by the crowd. She felt a little shy, but her heart was filled with sweetness. Jianchen responded to each and every one of them with a smile. At this moment, an old man from the village walked up from behind with a cane in his hand. He said to Jianchen, "Little Chen, don't delay the wedding between you and Yu for too long. This old man knows that you people who have cultivated Saint Force can live for a very long time, but there are still many people in Longevity Valley who haven't cultivated before. The longest they can live is 200 years. Don't wait for hundreds or thousands of years for your wedding. You people who have cultivated before can afford to wait, but ordinary people like us can't. Sigh, I'm getting old, and I don't have many more years to live. I just hope that, at the last moment of my life, I can see you juniors getting married." "That's right. Don't let us disappear when you get married." A burly, middle-aged man chuckled from beside the old man. He was clearly teasing them. However, the speaker did not mean what he said, but the listener did. Jianchen immediately felt like he had been struck by a bolt of lightning when he heard those words. He was extremely shocked. He knew that the next battle with the world of Forsaken Saints would definitely be the most ferocious invasion from the world of Forsaken Saint. Not only would there be several dozen receival experts, but there would also be several returnance experts. There would even be the extremely powerful Spirit King who had reached origin energy and comprehended the way of the sword. No one knew who would survive in such an intense battle. Even Jianchen was not completely confident that he could survive the battle. After bidding farewell to the people of Longevity Valley, Jianchen and Yu left. Little Fatty did not leave with them. Instead, he stayed behind to accompany his grief-stricken mother. The Ziying sword shone with resplendent light as it rapidly flew above the clouds. Jianchen seemed to have a lot on his mind as he stood on the Ziying sword. "Jianchen, what's wrong with you? Is there something on your mind?" Yu sensed Jianchen's abnormality and immediately showed concern. Jianchen gently hugged Yu's slender waist. After a moment of silence he said, Let's get married as soon as possible." Yu clearly did not expect Jianchen to suddenly make a decision like that. She was stunned, but she understood what Jianchen was thinking very soon. She did not show any joy at all. Instead, she became rather sorrowful. "Jianchen, are you worried that we won't be able to see each other again after the next battle with the world of Forsaken Saints?" Yu gently asked. Her voice trembled slightly. Jianchen nodded slightly. He said nothing. He knew that the time he spent with Yu, his parents, and his friends and family would come to an end in the next battle with the world of Forsaken Saint. Perhaps the Tianyuan continent would vanish from the world forever after the next war. Let's get married in 3 days. What do you think?" Jianchen asked. Chapter 1507. When Jianchen saw Yu's desolate smile, his heart skipped a beat. He had no idea just how many of his close friends and family would survive the next battle against the world of Forsaken Saint. Perhaps the Tianyuan continent would collapse in the next battle. Perhaps it would be reduced to islands scattered across the vast ocean, or perhaps the entire continent would be reduced to dust and sink to the bottom of the ocean, becoming a part of the ocean. Even his life would come to an end in that battle. He would burn out the last of his life. Perhaps the Tianyuan continent would successfully fend off the attack of the world of Forsaken Saint. The countless faces in Jianchen's head would still exist after the next battle, but Jianchen knew that the chances were extremely slim with the difference in strength between the Tianyuan continent and the world of Forsaken Saints. After over a decade, the White Tiger still hasn't emerged from accepting the Beast God's legacy on the Beast God continent. Once he comes out, he'll probably reach the Origin Realm, and the Beast God Hall will be under the White Tiger's control. Senior Tianjian is still refining the Supreme Divine Hall left behind by Mo Tianyun. The Supreme Divine Hall is extremely extraordinary. I was too weak back then, so I couldn't see through its mysteries, but now that I think about it carefully, I probably won't be able to destroy it even if I use my full strength. If the Divine Hall is used to guard the tunnel between the two worlds, we should be able to stop the world of Forsaken Saints from invading the Tianyuan continent, Jianchen thought. It was not as if the Tianyuan continent had no hope of fending off the world of Forsaken Saints. It all depended on whether the White Tiger could successfully complete his legacy and control the Beast God Hall before the next battle. Whether Great Elder Tianjian could refine the Supreme Divine Hall in Mercenary City in time and use it to guard the tunnel between the two worlds. Jianchen and Yu went their separate ways. Yu returned alone to prepare for the wedding, while Jianchen did not change direction. He directly flew to the Huang family. The Huang family was no longer the same as before. Whether it was their relationship with Jianchen or their ancestor, Huang Tianba, becoming a saint emperor, It was enough for the Huang family's name to spread across the entire Tian-Yuan continent. They were no longer a hermit clan that could only intimidate a region. Even though there were many holy emperor experts now and Huang Tianba was not particularly outstanding among them, he was definitely one of the most famous holy emperors among the four races. When Jianshan arrived at the Huang family on his sword, a powerful barrier enveloped a radius of several hundred kilometers around the manor. The barrier had been personally cast down by Huang Tianba and possessed great defensive power. Only holy emperor experts could break through it. It had become the Huang family's greatest defensive measure. Although the Huang family continued to live the life of a hermit and had become countless times more powerful than before, their vigilance did not decrease at all. Just as Jianshan approached the territory of the Huang family and arrived before the barrier cast down by Huang Tianba, two powerful presences radiated from the Huang family. Two figures fused with the surrounding space and flew out of the villa. Although they moved very quickly, they did not stir up any wind at all. They were completely silent. "Who are you? Tell me your name." As the two figures rapidly approached, an old voice rang out. The voice was barely audible within the barrier, but as soon as it left the barrier, it immediately rumbled like thunder, exploding in the mountains. The sound waves covered a radius of 100 kilometers, startling the birds and beasts in the forest. Jianshan hovered in the air outside the barrier calmly. He stared at the manor several dozen kilometers away from the barrier as he faintly smiled. He did not conceal his presence this time. Within the manor, Huang Tianba suddenly opened his eyes in a dark secret room 1,000 meters below the ground. The moment he opened his eyes, two streaks of light shot out, illuminating the entire secret room. Two finger-sized holes appeared on the door of the secret room that had not been reinforced. "It's Jianshan. Ha 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 ha, he's been missing for over a decade now. My great-granddaughter misses him so much," Huang Tianba laughed heartily. Huang Tianba let out a hearty laugh. With a flash, he vanished from the secret room and went out to receive him personally. At the same time, in the forbidden grounds of the Huang clan's manor, a small pavilion made of ordinary bamboo stood there quietly. Aside from the Huang clan's patriarch and ancestor, Huang Tianba, no one was allowed to enter this forbidden grounds. Even the elders of the Huang clan were not allowed to enter this place. There was only one building in the quiet forbidden grounds. Many flowers and plants were planted around the building. Every single one of them was extremely precious, and just the fragrance they gave off possessed a unique effect. It was extremely beneficial to cultivators. There was even a type of flower that could not be seen on the Tian-Yuan continent. The fragrance it gave off was even beneficial to experts like the Holy Emperor. The flower was called Heaven-Connecting Flower. The soil used to grow the Heaven-Connecting Flower did not originate from the Tian-Yuan continent. At this moment, a slender woman in a yellow dress stood before the Heaven-Connecting Flowers. She held a watering can in her hand as she focused on watering the flowers. She was focused and her gaze was gentle. She looked at the Heaven-Connecting Flowers as if she was looking at the person she loved. Her gaze was filled with gentleness, as well as deep longing. The water in the watering bottle was a green liquid. It radiated with a tremendous presence of life. If this water appeared on the Tian-Yuan continent, it would be enough for saint rulers and holy emperor to fight over. It would lead to a bloodbath, yet it was only used to water the flowers here. She was Huang Luan. Ever since Jianshan had left, she had left Mercenary City. She had stayed in the building all these years, spending all her time with the flowers. She had not taken a single step out of the building, quietly waiting for Jianshan's return. In the days without Jianshan, Huang Luan would pour all of her yearning for Jianshan onto the Heaven-Connecting Flower. Jianshan had left the Heaven-Connecting Flower to her, so she felt like she was looking at Jianshan when she looked at the flowers. She felt like she was accompanying Jianshan when she stayed with the flowers. Chapter 1508. However, at this moment, Huang Luan suddenly froze as she watered the Heaven-Connecting Flowers with the spring of life. The spring of life in her hand that constantly gushed with life froze as well. Huang Luan suddenly raised her head and looked into the distance. Her gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space and the obstructions of the buildings. She could clearly see what was happening several dozen kilometers away. To no surprise, she was outside the barrier of the Huang family, where Jianchen was. The kettle in Huang Luan's hand fell to the ground, and the spring of life immediately flowed out of the kettle, emitting a strong aura of life. However, at that moment, Huang Luan didn't even look at the water bottle that had fallen on the ground. Her delicate body trembled slightly as she stared into the distance. Her gaze contained excitement and joy. In her eyes, glistening teardrops faintly flickered. The two saint rulers who had flown out of the Huang family arrived beside their sister at the same time outside the barrier of the Huang family. They did not step out of the barrier, but they were only several dozen meters away from Jianchen. They were two white-robed old men. One of them had white hair and a ruddy complexion. His eyebrows reached his temples, giving him a sage-like presence. The other person seemed rather ordinary. Jianchen hovered there quietly as he indifferently glanced past the two old men. He did not know their names, but he had seen them in the Huang family before. They were only Heaven Saint Masters back then, but after several dozen years, they had both broken through and become saint rulers. "May I ask who you are? Why have you come to our Huang family?" The sage-like old man clasped his hands at Jianchen and asked nonchalantly. However, before he could finish speaking, his eyes suddenly narrowed and widened. He stared at Jianchen in shock. His expression rapidly changed, turning into shock, respect, and disbelief in the end. At the same time, the expression of the ordinary-looking saint ruler beside him changed drastically as well. In the end, it also turned into shock and respect. Clearly, he had recognized Jianchen. Huang family's elder Huang Bing greets Supreme Jianchen. Huang family's elder Huang Yifeng greets Supreme Jianchen. Without any hesitation, the two saint rulers bowed to Jianchen and lowered their heads. They were very respectful, but there was also a sliver of excitement. "Ha ha, little friend Jianchen, you've finally appeared. If you hadn't appeared, I'm afraid that in a few years, this old man would have searched the entire world for you." With a hearty laugh, Huang Tianba appeared in the air. He strode over, and with each step, a visible spatial ripple appeared. He crossed several dozen kilometers in just a few steps and arrived before Jianchen. "It is the honor of our Huang family for the sovereign of the human race to visit us. Children, why don't you come out and welcome the sovereign of the human race?" Huang Tianba laughed loudly. His voice was loud and clear, and it reverberated through the entire territory of the Huang family. It alarmed everyone in the Huang family. Even the clansmen who were in seclusion woke up early from their cultivation with Huang Tianba's words. Immediately, the people of the Huang family surged. Everyone stopped what they were doing and came out to welcome Jianchen. Jianchen bitterly smiled when he saw this. He said, "Senior Huang, there's no need to do this. Jianchen, you've already become the sovereign of the human race. You're the greatest expert on the Tian-Yuan continent. You possess a great status, so it's our honor to have you personally visit our Huang family. The entire Huang family is proud of you, and we enjoy an extraordinary status on the Tian-Yuan continent. You have to do this, you have to do this," Huang Tianba laughed. If it were any other holy emperor, they would definitely have bowed to Jianchen. However, due to Huang Tianba's relationship with his great-granddaughter, Jianchen, there was no need for him to be courteous to Jianchen. At this moment, Jianchen and Huang Tianba seemed to sense something. They both looked in the direction of the Huang family's villa. At this moment, a yellow figure flew out of the villa, approaching them at a steady pace. It was Huang Luan. Her eyes were filled with tears as she looked at Jianchen emotionally. However, she did not move quickly. She slowly flew over at a speed that was extremely slow for a holy emperor. "You're back!" Huang Luan arrived in front of Jianchen. She did not say 1,000 words. She only said this sentence that was filled with deep longing, excitement, and trembling. "I'm back." Jianchen smiled at Huang Luan before taking a step forward. He arrived before her and hugged her tightly. Huang Luan also hugged Jianchen tightly. She buried her head deep into Jianchen's chest as her body trembled violently. She could no longer hold back her tears. Huang Tianba stroked his long beard as he watched this from one side with a smile. He then waved his hand at the people of the Huang family below, dispersing them. Afterward, he left silently as well, leaving Jianchen and Huang Luan alone. Huang Manor, in the forbidden area of the Huang family, Jianchen and Huang Luan were strolling in the garden that was filled with a strong fragrance. Huang Luan hugged Jianchen's arm with a satisfied expression as she listened to Jianchen narrate his experiences over the years. This forbidden area was very quiet. Apart from Jianchen and Huang Luan, there was no one else. At this moment, this forbidden area seemed to have become a small world that belonged exclusively to Jianchen and Huang Luan. At this time, Jianchen stopped and turned his head to look at Huang Luan. With a serious expression, he asked, "Luan, are you willing to marry me?" Huang Luan unhappily glared at Jianchen when she heard that. She said, "It's not like you don't know about my feelings for you. Moreover, I'm already yours. You already know whether I'm willing to marry you or not. Then come back to Flame City with me. In 3 days we'll get married. Other than you, there'll be you and even." Jianchen hesitated. He thought of the heavenly enchantress. The heavenly enchantress had already given birth to a son for him. According to tradition, he would marry the heavenly enchantress, but with the heavenly enchantress personality, Jianchen really could not guarantee whether she would agree or not. Huang Luan glared at Jianchen and angrily said, "Jianchen, is there a third woman aside from me and you? Who is that person?" "She's known as the Heavenly Enchantress on the Tian Yuan continent, but she's no longer the saint ruler of the past," Jianchen said with some melancholy. At this moment, he could not help but think back to when he first met the Heavenly Enchantress. He remembered that it was in a miniature world in Mercenary City. He was only a puny Earth Saint Master, and the Heavenly Enchantress was an unreachable expert in his eyes. Chapter 1509. On the same day, Jianchen left the Huang family with Huang Luan and returned to Flame City. Before long, the news that the captain of the Flame Mercenaries, the city lord of Flame City, and the greatest human expert, Jianchen, was about to get married spread from the city. It spread across the entire continent in an extremely short amount of time. In just half a day, the Sea Realm, magical beasts, and the Wasteland continent all received the news at the same time, shocking all 4 races. The wedding was set to take place in Flame City. The identity of the bride did not spread, which led to guesses in the outside world. Many people believed that Jianchen definitely would have more than one bride for his wedding. Other than Yu, who was publicly acknowledged as his fiancée, there would definitely be a second, third, or even more. There were even a few people who were familiar with Jianchen who guessed that Huang Luan would become Jianchen's second bride. Bai Yuntian ended her cultivation in the artifact space as well. She appeared in Flame City and commanded the people of the city. She personally began making arrangements for her son's wedding. Bai Lian participated in the planning as well. As the bride, Yu and Huang Luan vanished from everyone's sight. According to custom, the two of them could not see the outside world until the day of the wedding. The king of the kingdom of Jessen had also hurried over from afar. He was currently beaming with joy as he smiled from the bottom of his heart. His face was filled with pride. Although Cardsun had been the king of the kingdom of Jessen for several decades now, and the kingdom of Jessen's status on the Tian Yuan continent could not be compared to the past, Cardsun believed that he had never lived such a glorious life before. After Jianchen and Yu's wedding, he had become the father of the greatest human expert. All the important people of Lore City and Changyang Prefecture arrived in Flame City through Space Gate. Jianxin's 3 aunts and Chang Bo all participated in the various arrangements for Jianxin's wedding. At the same time, a large number of invitations made from violet gold were sent out from Flame City. They were sent to various places, inviting all the people Jianxin was familiar with. Not only did the people of the Qin Empire receive invitations, but even Qin Shao of the Tianqin clan received one as well. A portion of the invitations were even sent to the Sea Race, the Magical Beasts, and the 100 Races by the Holy Emperor of Flame City and the Holy Emperor of Flame City. Flame City immediately became busy. All the people in the city began to clean up the city. The city was decorated with lanterns and banners. All the mercenaries of the Flame Mercenaries volunteered to prepare for the wedding of the captain they admired the most. Jianxin did not take part in the arrangements for the wedding. These matters were all handled by his seniors and by Lian. As for himself, he left Flame City and directly made his way to Three Saint Island. At this moment, the heavenly enchantress stood on Three Saint Mountain on Three Saint Island as she gazed in the direction of the Tian Yuan continent. Wild winds whistled in the sky, causing her purple dress to ruffle and her hair to drift in the wind. She held a guqin in her arms. It was 6 feet long and 1 foot wide. There were 36 strings on it, and every single string shone brightly, as if there was a mysterious energy flowing within. Vaguely, there seemed to be an ethereal sound coming from the strings, but if one listened carefully, they would not be able to hear anything at all. The heavenly enchantress stood there with the zither in her arms. Her gaze toward the Tian Yuan continent was filled with many mixed feelings. In particular, she could even see a shrunken version of Flame City in her eyes. Countless people bustled about in the city, decorating it with lanterns and banners. At this moment, a young man who seemed to be in his 20s, and seemed rather similar to Jianxin, walked over from afar. He looked at the heavenly enchantress with some eagerness and said, "Mother, father has already gone missing for over a decade. There's no trace of him anywhere. When do you think father will return?" "Your father has already returned. You'll be able to see him very soon." The heavenly enchantress turned around and looked at the young man with a gaze filled with gentleness. The young man rejoiced when he heard that. He asked in some disbelief, "Really? Father has really returned?" The young man was Shangguan Aojian. He had already grown up now, becoming a handsome young man. He was no longer the child from before. Shangguan Aojian's face did not show any signs of immaturity. There was only a sense of coldness. A faint presence of blood could even be sensed from him. This was a presence that could only be possessed by people who had gone through life and death battles. As soon as Shangguan Aojian finished speaking, a dazzling speck of violet light suddenly appeared in the distant horizon. In less than a few seconds, the speck of violet light turned into a dazzling streak of light, shooting over from afar with indescribable speed. Shangguan Aojian immediately became overjoyed when he saw the streak of violet light. He was filled with excitement as he said, "It's father, it really is father. Mother, father has really returned." The streak of violet light moved extremely quickly, arriving on Three Saint Island in a single moment. The violet light dispersed, revealing the white-clothed Jianxin. At this moment, Jianxin was only a few hundred meters away from Shangguan Aojian. However, Jianxin did not look at the heavenly enchantress. Instead, he looked at Shangguan Aojian, who was several hundred meters away. He faintly smiled, as well as some guilt. He still clearly remembered that the last time he saw Xiao Bao was just an innocent child. But now, Xiao Bao was already an adult. He knew that he was not a good father. He did not fulfill his responsibilities as a father. He owed Xiao Bao too much. However, there were some things that were beyond his control. This caused his heart to be filled with waves of bitterness. "Father, you've finally returned." Shangguan Aojian was overjoyed as he quickly walked over. His face was filled with joy from seeing Jianxin. He did not blame or reprimand his father at all. Jianxin also made his way over. He grabbed Shangguan Aojian's shoulders with both hands and carefully studied his son. He could obviously sense the faint presence of blood from Xiao Bao as well as the determination that had been tempered by all sorts of hardships. "Xiao Bao, you've grown up," Jianchen said. His emotions were mixed. He felt gratified, emotional, and guilty. Afterwards, he gently pulled open Xiao Bao's clothes with one hand, revealing most of his chest. There were 3 vicious scars on Xiao Bao's chest. Every single one of them ran through his entire chest. Chapter 15:10. Father, while you were gone, I left 3 Saint Island and traveled through the Tian Yuan continent, the Beast God continent, the Wasteland continent, and the Sea Realm. My wounds all came from the battles I fought along the way, Jianchen said. Shangguan Aojian explained when he saw Jianchen notice his wounds. He seemed rather proud. Originally, I did not plan on keeping these scars. The recovery of the chaotic body can make all the scars vanish, but my mother insisted on keeping these 3 scars. Jianchen glanced at the heavenly enchantress who stood nearby with her back to him, staring at the vast sea. He obviously knew that the heavenly enchantress wanted Xiao Bao to leave behind the 3 scars for him. Or it could be said that she wanted these 3 scars to tell her that when little Bao went out to gain experience, he had encountered numerous dangers and had even almost lost his life a few times. However, when little Bao was in danger, as his father, she was not by little Bao's side. "Xiao Bao, I've been gone for over a decade. During that time, I didn't even help you when you were in danger. Do you blame me?" Jianchen gently asked. His voice was filled with self-blame and guilt. Shangguan Aojian shook his head. Not only was he not angered, but he even showed some pride. He said, "Father, I once stayed on the Tian Yuan continent for a period of time. I've already understood a few things about your past from the mouths of others and some rumors. I also understand just how heavy the burden on your shoulders is right now. Xiao Bao will only feel proud to have a father like you." Jianchen smiled. He was filled with joy and relief. At the same time, he let out a sigh of relief inside. What he feared the most was that Xiao Bao would resent him and become dissatisfied with him. Now, all his uneasiness had vanished with Shangguan Aojian's words. Even though he was the greatest human expert in the eyes of others, even though he was a cold and merciless god of death in the eyes of his enemies, he was only a father before Xiao Bao, a benevolent father. And in the Sea Realm, I came across a senior with unfathomable strength. I couldn't see the senior's face clearly, but the senior understood father extremely well. From the senior, I learnt even more about father's past. It was also the senior who allowed me to understand just what price father had paid to reach his current level of cultivation in just a few decades, said Shangguan Aojian. His gaze towards Jianchen was filled with admiration. "Oh right, the unfathomable senior from the Sea Realm gave me a jade pendant. There was once when I was in danger, and it was all thanks to this jade pendant that I was saved." Shangguan Aojian pulled out a palm-sized jade pendant from his space ring. The jade pendant was exquisite and was engraved with simple patterns. At the center of the patterns was a trident that seemed to be able to pierce through the world. Vaguely, the trident gave off a pressure that was enough to make even holy emperor experts shiver in fear. Jianchen stared at the jade pendant. He could sense the power of an Origin Realm expert from the jade pendant, and he was extremely familiar with the power. He already knew who the senior from the sea race that Shangguan Aojian mentioned was. "Xiao Bao, take good care of this jade pendant. It can block several full-powered attacks from Holy Emperor experts for you. With it, even the Holy Emperor won't be able to kill you," said Shangguan Aojian. Not only did the creation of a jade pendant require great strength, but it also required a corresponding technique and method. Jianchen did not know how to create the jade pendant, so he was unable to create something that could block attacks from Holy Emperor experts. A smear of surprise appeared in Shangguan Aojian's eyes. He carefully stowed the jade pendant away before looking at Jianchen and the heavenly enchantress. He smiled. Father, Mother, have a good chat. I'll go catch some fish. It's rare for the three of us to be reunited, so we have to celebrate like the fishermen on the island. With that, Xiaobao left Three Saint Island. With his departure, only Jianchen and the heavenly enchantress remained on the peak of Three Saint Island. Jianchen looked at the heavenly enchantress. Mixed feelings filled his face. He strode over and slowly arrived beside her. He gently sighed. Mu-er, it's already been so many years. Even Xiao Bao has grown up. Are you still unable to let go of what happened in the past? I'm the heavenly enchantress. The heavenly enchantress was emotionless. Her cold voice was emotionless, but mixed feelings also flickered through her enchanting eyes. The heavenly enchantress is just a title given to you by the people of the Tian Yuan continent. Shangguan Mu-er is your true name, said Jianchen. The heavenly enchantress immediately trembled when she heard Shangguan Mu-er's name. She gently bit her lip as a sliver of sorrow appeared in the depths of her eyes. If you continue to deny this name, it'll be meaningless for Xiao Bao to have the surname Shangguan, continued Jianchen. The heavenly enchantress fell silent. She slowly sat down and placed the zither of the demonic cry on her legs. She gently plucked the strings with her hands, producing a pleasant melody. Every single note seemed to be filled with a mysterious charm that could reach deep into one's soul and reverberate through one's mind. It could affect a person's emotions and will. However, although the sound of the zither was beautiful and sounded like heavenly music, it did not have its usual lightness. Instead, it sounded a little dull. Jianchen also sat down beside the heavenly enchantress. He turned his head and looked at her indescribably beautiful face. He said, I know you resent me, and a portion of it comes from Xiao Bao. During these years when little Bao was growing up, I didn't fulfill my responsibility as a father. When he encountered danger, I didn't protect him by his side. But you ought to be clearly aware that I had no choice at all. Although I've disappeared for over a decade, I've always been working hard to increase the strength of our side. I just hope that when the world of Forsaken Saints invades again, we'll be even more powerful to fend off the invaders and protect the world we live in. During that time, I even encountered an unprecedented life-threatening danger. I was only half a step away from death and almost died. Although I managed to survive in the end, the price was the destruction of my body, leaving only my soul behind. As for Xiao Bao, I will make it up to him. I'll make up for everything I've done to him in the past few years. The heavenly enchantress remained unmoved, as if she had not heard what Jianchen had said at all. She focused all of her attention on the zither, playing it with all her heart. She paid no attention to the outside world. Jianchen remained silent for a while before continuing. In 3 days, I'll be holding a wedding with Ur and Luan-er in Flame City. I'll take you there this time to make up for our missing wedding. At the same time, I'll announce to the world that Jianchen is my son. I won't be going. Xiao Bao won't be going either. This time, the heavenly enchantress spoke. Her voice was cold and resolute. Jianchen let out a long sigh. He looked at the heavenly enchantress with a slight headache and said, Mu-er, some things have already been decided. Why can't you accept it and let it go? You can say that to me when you've truly done what a father should do. And only mortals would do something as meaningless as a wedding, the heavenly enchantress coldly said. The heavenly enchantress said coldly. Her zither continued to play, but it had become much more oppressive. Jianchen secretly rejoiced inside. He could tell from what the heavenly enchantress had said that her resentment for him had decreased. The main reason why she was dissatisfied with him was because of Xiao Bao. In particular, Jianchen felt like he had suddenly seen the light after hearing the heavenly enchantress' last sentence. Marriage was a major event in life for mortals, and it was also a necessary ceremony. However, it was indeed meaningless to fighters with long lifespans. There were even some fighters on the Tian Yuan continent who did not talk about marriage at all when they got married. As long as both parties were willing, there was no need for any ceremony. As long as they had done it, they were husband and wife. They did not even need to inform their parents or seniors. The reason why so many people still maintained the customs of mortals was because all fighters had slowly grown up as mortals. As a result, even though some fighters were powerful, they were still unable to change the customs of mortals due to their habits. Jianchen did not place too much importance on marriage after understanding this. Holding a wedding was just a tradition that had slowly spread among mortals. It did not represent anything. In reality, he had already done it with the heavenly enchantress and Huang Luan. They were already husband and wife. Even if they did not get married, it would not change the fact that they were already husband and wife. Chapter 15:11. The last thing Jianchen said seemed to have touched a sore spot in the heavenly enchantress' heart. It immediately caused her presence to suddenly change, and she stopped playing her zither as well. At that moment, Jianchen could clearly sense an icy-cold presence radiate from the heavenly enchantress. The presence affected the surrounding space. The temperature on the peak of the mountain plummeted, as if winter had arrived. "You're meddling too much," the heavenly enchantress coldly said. She was emotionless and her eyes were cold. Jianchen knew that the heavenly enchantress still held an extremely heavy grudge against Hao Wu. She did not have a good impression of Czar Kaiyun at all, so he immediately felt his head ache. Did you know that when I was young, I was known as a genius in the clan? My father, mother, steward Changbo, and many people in the Changyang prefecture all had extremely high hopes for me because I learned everything extremely quickly when I was young. I even had a photographic memory, far surpassing people of the same age. At that time, my father and mother took great care of me, treating me like a treasure. However, several years later, when I participated in the clan's test for Saint Force, I was discovered to have no talent for cultivating Saint Force due to an accident. I would be reduced to a cripple for the rest of my life. I would never be able to produce Saint Force in my body, condense a Saint weapon, and become a fighter. The news that the fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture, who had been known as a genius since young, had actually been discovered to be a cripple spread across the entire Changyang prefecture very quickly, causing my status in the clan to plummet from heaven to hell. My father, Changyang Ba, rarely visited me after that. As a matter of fact, I barely even saw my father in those few years. Only my mother, sister, aunt, and Chang Bo continued to care for me like before. Back then, even though I was the fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture, the son of the current prefect of Changyang prefecture, Changyang Ba, some of the servants in the clan would bully, mock me. I don't know if my father had already forgotten about me, but he never helped me. Even though that was the case, I did not resent my father at all, nor did I blame him, because he was still my father after all, the one who had given me life. Or in other words, I treasured this period of kinship very much because we had parents. Even if your parents had once wronged you, it was still happiness to you. It was because of their existence that you were happy. On the Tianyuan continent, there are many fatherless and motherless orphans. There are even some orphans whose parents have left the world due to various reasons as soon as they are born. They have never received any care since they were young, and they do not even know what their parents look like. I can clearly understand this feeling, so compared to these people, we are all happy. At the very least, our seniors are still around and our family is still around. I've learnt a few things about the past from your father. I know that you resent your father, and a large part of it comes from your mother. Actually, your father regretted the matters of the past very much as well, but it has already happened. Some things have already been decided, so it's useless for him to regret. Time cannot be turned back. Some things that have already happened cannot be changed, and some things that have already been lost can never be recovered. However, he is still your father, the person closest to you in the world. Jianchen exhaled deeply. He looked at the vast sea in the distance, and suddenly became rather stern. He continued, moreover, The next invasion of the world of forsaken saints is drawing closer and closer. I know about their strength, and you know about it as well. The disparity between our strength is as great as a chasm. Whether it's in terms of numbers or peak battle prowess, our Tianyuan continent is at an absolute disadvantage. We don't even have any hope of emerging victorious in the next battle. Our only hope is to use the Divine Hall to block off the entrance, but whether the Divine Hall in Mercenary City can be refined in time, and whether it can block off the entrance as we wish is still unknown. If we can't stop the world of Forsaken Saints from invading the Tianyuan continent, the Tianyuan continent will only face destruction in the end. Even I don't have the confidence to survive. My family and friends will all die in the next battle. The human race might be completely wiped out in the next battle, including your father, Hao Wu. Jian Chen's last sentence was like a thunderclap in the heavenly enchantress' ears, causing her to violently tremble. A smear of paleness appeared on her face as well. A deep rumble rang out from the zither. 3 strings of the zither had snapped. Jianchen looked at the heavenly enchantress. What I just said is only the worst-case scenario. Maybe we can survive the next battle, but many experts will definitely die on the Tianyuan continent. You might even never be able to see your father again after the next battle. These few days of peace might be the last time we can spend with our family. Some things, when they exist, when you have them, you don't know how to cherish them. When you lose them one day, you will understand just how important they are to you. But at that time, everything will be too late. Jianchen spoke very softly and indifferently, but the heavenly enchantress' heart churned when she heard this. She trembled even more violently as a conflicted light filled her eyes. A while later, the heavenly enchantress slowly calmed down. She slowly lowered her head and looked at the broken strings. Her eyes were filled with mixed feelings, confusion, and sorrow. She slowly placed her right hand on the broken strings and gently stroked them. In just a few seconds, the strings had returned to normal. The heavenly enchantress slowly stood up and gazed in the direction of the Tianyuan continent. The zither of the demonic cry in her arms immediately blurred, turning into an extremely powerful ball of energy that disappeared into her right hand. She left 3 Saint Island empty-handed and flew in the direction of the Tianyuan continent. Jianchen's words had touched her greatly. At the same time, she understood that she might never be able to see her father again after the next battle, so she wanted to go to the Tianyuan continent to see him. She stowed the zither of the demonic cry away. This time, she was not going to see Hao Wu as the heavenly enchantress but as Shangguan Mu. Jianchen exhaled deeply as he watched the heavenly enchantress leave. He smiled before sending a message to Shangguan Aojian, who was playing in the sea on a boat, before following the heavenly enchantress. Although Shangguan Mu could rip open space gates, she did not do so this time. Instead, she flew through the air, heading to the Tianyuan continent from 3 Saint Island. Jianchen followed behind her on the Ziying sword. Chapter 1512. There was an ancient mountain range 10,000 kilometers away from the Holy Emperor's empire of the Tianyuan continent. Today, a violet streak of light suddenly appeared on the horizon. Like a violet comet, it shot through the sky extremely quickly and vanished into the depths of the mountain range in a short while. The violet streak of light was Jianchen. Jianchen flew through the air on a violet sword that was over 10 meters long. Beside him, the heavenly enchantress in a violet dress walked through the air as if she was taking a stroll. The space around her gently trembled and constantly changed. Visible ripples of space appeared beneath her feet. With each step, she seemed to be teleporting across a great distance. She was no slower than Jianchen. The heavenly enchantress' strength had already surpassed the Holy Emperor's, having reached the origin realm. Moreover, her use and control of space had surpassed regular receival experts. Jianchen was not surprised at all by the heavenly enchantress' rapid growth. Ignoring the yin and yang energy around the yin-yang saint rock that he and the heavenly enchantress had absorbed, Just Xiao Bao alone was enough to bring the heavenly enchantress a great fortune. Xiao Bao possessed the innate chaotic body, which was extremely rare even in the immortals' world. As the mother of the innate chaotic body, the heavenly enchantress was blessed by the world, so her path of cultivation would be smooth and smooth. If she did not die along the way, she would definitely become an emperor. This emperor was not the holy emperor of the Tian Yuan continent, but the immortal emperor of the immortals' world. As a matter of fact, Jianshan suspected that the heavenly enchantress was able to bypass the seal and reach the origin realm from the holy emperor in this sealed world because of Xiao Bao. Although the seal that prevented everyone from reaching the origin realm was extremely powerful, it was flawed as well. It could not trap him and Xiao Bao, who cultivated the chaotic body, nor could it trap Tai Ta, the war god of the 100 races, or Xiao Jin or Xiao Ling, who possessed innate spiritual bodies born from the world. Jianshan and the heavenly enchantress entered the depths of the mountain range. In the end, they stopped before a small wooden hut that stood at the peak of a mountain. The hut had already stood there by itself for several dozen years. It had become extremely fragile from the violent winds in the sky, like an old man in his twilight years. It creaked in the wind as if it was about to collapse. The Ziying sword had already shrunk to a meter long and was stuck to Jianshan's back. Jianshan stood beside the heavenly enchantress and stared at the hut quietly. The heavenly enchantress also stared at the old hut. Her emotions were extremely mixed. The people in the wooden house seemed to have sensed the arrival of outsiders. With a creak, the door of the wooden house slowly opened, revealing Hao Wu's figure. He saw Hao standing inside the small door. The white suit he was wearing was slightly old, and his face was haggard. His expression revealed a deep sense of fatigue. Even though Hao Wu's appearance had not changed much, Jianshan discovered that Hao Wu was much older than before. Hao Wu immediately became stunned the moment he saw the heavenly enchantress. His trembling voice was filled with joy and disbelief, as well as mixed emotions and bitterness. Shangguan Mu immediately felt guilt and sorrow in her heart when she saw Hao Wu's haggard face, as well as the strands of white hair on his head. In the past, she had always resented Hao Wu, to the point where she was unwilling to acknowledge him as her father. This was because, in her opinion, not only had Hao Wu let down her mother, but he had never given her a single day of happiness. In the end, her mother had even died because of Hao Wu, and he had never truly cared for her. However, only after hearing what Jianshan had said did Shangguan Mu suddenly realize that even though she hated Hao Wu very much, he still held a certain position in her heart. After all, he was her father, as well as her only family in the world. However, Hao Wu's position in Shangguan Mu's heart was nothing compared to her hatred for him. She could not forgive him at all. The reason why she had come this time was because the short period of time before the world of Forsaken Saints' next invasion might be the last period of time they would have together. After the next battle, the heavenly enchantress and Hao Wu might cease to exist. Perhaps she could survive with her strength at the origin realm, but it was extremely likely that Hao Wu would vanish from the world. "Father," Shangguan Mu said with difficulty. Her voice trembled slightly. At that moment she was filled with mixed feelings. Even she did not know what she was feeling. Hao Wu became stunned when he heard the word father. His body began to tremble violently as 2 streams of murky tears flowed uncontrollably from his eyes. You're finally willing to call me father." Hao Wu was emotional. Hao Wu was overjoyed. At that moment, he felt like he was in a beautiful dream because he had looked forward to hearing Shangguan Mu call him father for many years already. As a matter of fact, he had even treated it as an extravagant hope in the end. Shangguan Mu gently bit her lip and said nothing. She shifted her gaze from Hao Wu to the wooden hut behind him. As she slowly raised her right hand, a vast and terrifying energy immediately surged out. It condensed into the zither of the demonic cry in a single moment, and she began to play it gently. The sound of the zither was light, but it was also rather heavy. Every single note seemed to possess a boundless charm, able to pierce through all obstructions and enter the soul. Jian Chun could tell that it was similar to the soothing melody that had been used to soothe the Chongyang ancestor's soul on Three Saint Island, but it was slightly different. When the melody reached his ears, he actually felt like his soul had been affected, making him extraordinarily calm at that moment. A comfortable feeling appeared from the depths of his soul, as if the melody possessed the miraculous ability to heal the soul. Jian Chun was shocked. Wounds to the soul were the most troublesome injuries. Any heavenly resource that could heal wounds to the soul was priceless. They were extremely rare, yet the heavenly enchantress was able to achieve such a miraculous effect with just her zither. He found this unbelievable. At the same time, Jianchen could sense that the music had various other effects aside from healing wounds to the soul. Just listening to it was extremely beneficial to the soul. Very soon, the music dispersed and the song ended. The zither of the demonic cry vanished from Shangguan Er's hands. At the same time, the eyelids of Czar Kaiyun, who had been unconscious for many years, actually twitched gently. Chapter 15:13. Czar Kaiyun, who had been unconscious for many years, woke up from Shangguan Er's zither. At the same time, Jianchen left as well, returning to Flame City. He gave Shangguan Er Hao Wu and Czar Kaiyun some space. As for how they would deal with this matter in the end, it was not something he could interfere with. This was all he could do. There were still 2 days until Jianchen's wedding. When Jianchen returned to Flame City, the entire city had changed. Whether it was the various stores or the residences of the members of the Flame Mercenaries, they were all decorated with lanterns and banners. The entire city was filled with a joyous atmosphere. The god's domain was a famous sea area in the Sea Tribe. The reason why it was famous was not only because the god's domain was a very dangerous place in the Sea Tribe. Even a 17-star expert might die if they stepped into it. At the same time, there were many hidden opportunities and treasures that even a 15-star or 16-star expert would be moved by. In particular, not only could the divine water of the world allow people to be reborn, turning a cripple into a cultivation prodigy, but it could also condense and strengthen the soul. It could increase the chances of saint rulers reaching the level of Holy Emperor. As a result, even though the realm of gods was a terrifying place that could devour Holy Emperor experts, it still could not stop countless adventurers from gathering from all directions and entering the realm of gods in search of fortuitous encounters. At that moment, there were a few people flying towards the exit of the divine domain with lightning speed. The person at the front had disheveled hair and a pale face. His entire body was covered in wounds, and he was already heavily injured. Behind him, there were 5 people who were not any weaker than him. They were chasing after him in an aggressive manner. The 6 people who pursued him were all saint rulers. It was impossible for the person who fled at the front to escape from the 5 saint rulers who were unscathed because he was heavily injured. As a result, the distance between the 2 sides closed bit by bit. In the end, the 5 people caught up to the fleeing person several dozen kilometers away. Both sides immediately began to shake violently. Even if the person was in peak condition, he would not be the opponent of the 5 of them, let alone the fact that he was heavily injured. As a result, as soon as the 2 sides clashed, the fleeing person was blown away while vomiting blood. His injuries became even more severe, and he did not even have the ability to flee. The 5 saint rulers seemed to know that their target had lost the ability to flee, so they were in no hurry to attack. They slowly surrounded the bloodied saint ruler on the ground. One of them sneered, "Zhou Chuyun, how can you possess a 16th star quaking thunder? If you knew this would happen, why didn't you hand it over to us? That way you could have kept your life. It's just a pity that the quaking thunder made the 5 of us chase you all the way here from the depths of the realm of gods. Even if you hand over the quaking thunder to us now, we won't spare you." As he said that, He slowly raised his spear and aimed it at Zhou Chuyun's head. Zhou Chuyun stared fixedly at the 5 of them as he lay on the ground. His eyes were filled with reluctance, but in the end, he seemed to know that he would not be able to escape death today. He sighed inside and slowly closed his eyes. The moment he closed his eyes, he could not help but think of his daughter, Zhou Lin. Lin, I won't be able to stay by your side from now on. You have to take good care of yourself from now on. Zhou Chuyun was most worried about his daughter, who he had left behind in the Divine City. At the same time, the Saint Ruler suddenly pushed off with his right hand. The spear in his hand shot toward Zhou Chuyun's head with lightning-like speed as a blur. However, just when the spear had traveled half the distance, the surrounding space suddenly froze. At that moment, time seemed to have stopped around the 6 of them. The spear that stabbed toward Zhou Chuyun's head froze as well due to the frozen space. It was unable to travel the remaining half of the distance no matter what. It was not just the spear. Even Zhou Chuyun and the 5 Saint Rulers who pursued him had been trapped by the frozen space. They remained in their original positions, unable to move. Fear filled the eyes of the Saint Ruler with the spear. With his strength as a 6th heavenly layer Saint Ruler, he had actually been immobilized by the frozen space. This was definitely not the strength of a Saint Ruler. Even 9th heavenly layer Saint Rulers could not do something like this. Only the Holy Emperor could do something like this. The 4 other Saint Rulers were filled with fear. A Holy Emperor had actually stopped them from killing Zhou Chuyun. Even if he was not acquainted with Zhou Chuyun, he was clearly trying to save him. They could only pray that the Holy Emperor had no relationship with Zhou Chuyun and had only interfered casually. That way, they would still have a chance at survival. Zhou Chuyun also sensed the change in space and immediately opened his eyes. Immediately, a woman in a white dress who seemed to be in her 20s appeared before him. A fist-sized beast lay on her shoulder. The woman was emotionless. Cold killing intent filled her eyes as she looked at the 5 Saint Rulers who pursued Zhou Chuyun. She coldly said, "I hate killing people for their treasures the most." With that, the woman gently pressed her hand against the heads of the 5 Saint Rulers. Immediately, the light in their eyes rapidly dimmed. In the blink of an eye, they had lost all their luster, becoming hollow and lifeless. Their souls had been dispersed by the woman's gentle palm strike, having been wiped out. The space returned to normal. The 5 Saint Rulers who pursued Zhou Chuyun collapsed on the ground powerlessly. The woman casually passed by them and made her way to the exit of the Divine Realm. She did not pay any attention to Zhou Chuyun, as if she had not interfered to save Zhou Chuyun. Instead, she just could not stand the act of killing people for their treasures. Zhou Chuyun struggled to his feet and clasped his hands at the woman gratefully. He said, "I am the captain of the Blue Sky Adventurers, Zhou Chuyun. Thank you for saving my life, senior." The woman ignored Zhou Chuyun and made her way to the exit of the Divine Realm step by step. In just a few steps, she had vanished from Zhou Chuyun's sight. Zhou Chuyun exhaled deeply after surviving the disaster. He took out a healing pill from his space ring and consumed it before taking the space rings of the 5 Saint Rulers. After that, he hurriedly left. Although he had experienced many life-threatening situations in the years he had spent adventuring, he had never been so close to death. He had already made up his mind that he would never risk his life in the Divine Realm again. He would return to the Tian Yuan continent with his daughter. Even if he died, he would die in his homeland. Chapter 1514. The TYT tribe was a medium-sized organization in the Sea Realm. Even though the TYT tribe was still an obscure clan in the vast Sea Realm, they still possessed a certain amount of status within 1,000,000 kilometers of where the TYT tribe resided. This was because the TYT tribe possessed a Saint Ruler ancestor who had reached the 14th star. He was extremely close to the 15th star Holy Emperor. Moreover, in recent years, the TYT tribe had frequently formed marriages with Saint Rulers like the Golden Sword tribe, the Herman tribe, the Dakar clan, and the Yenwei clan. They were extremely close. They even vaguely showed signs of forming an alliance, uniting the 5 great clans into one. Although the 5 medium-sized clans did not possess a holy emperor, the 5 saint rulers could still reign supreme in a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers if they worked together. Today was a joyous day for the Tyt tribe because the son of the current patriarch of the Tyt tribe was about to marry the daughter of the Golden Sword tribe. The entire tribe was enveloped in a joyous atmosphere. The patriarchs of the Tyt tribe and the Golden Sword tribe sat at the very top. They smiled as they happily looked at the newlyweds below. The greatest human expert, Sovereign Jianshan, will be holding a wedding in Flame City in 2 days. Today's wedding is a blessing from Sovereign Jianshan. I don't hope that you can become someone like Sovereign Jianshan in the future. I just hope that you can become an expert like an emperor, the patriarch of the Tyt tribe said to the newlyweds below. As soon as he finished speaking, many of the guests who had come to congratulate him immediately chimed in with flattery. These people were all from small clans nearby. To them, as long as they could establish a connection with the Tyt tribe, it would be enough for them to achieve meteoric success. The patriarch of the Tyt tribe listened to the flattery in the surroundings with a smile. Everyone thought that he was just saying that he wanted his son to become an emperor. Only he knew that the Tyt tribe truly needed an emperor in the future. This was because he had participated in the extermination of the Kaler tribe in the past. He knew that even the saint ruler ancestors of the 5 great clans had failed to stop Kea from escaping. If the Kaler tribe's talent was ordinary, the Tyt tribe would not have cared at all. However, not only was Kea extremely talented, having become a saint ruler at such a young age, but she also practiced the cultivation method of the 8 wastelands. Her strength was shocking and her potential was tremendous. She would definitely become a holy emperor in the future, possibly even becoming a holy emperor. In order to deal with Kea's revenge in the future, the 5 great clans that had participated in the extermination of Kea's clan in the past had all banded together through marriage. They had even begun to plan a merger. However, they also knew that if Kea became a holy emperor, the 5 great clans would not be her opponent even if they worked together. If she became a holy emperor, she would probably only need a wave of her hand, and the 5 great clans would vanish from the sea realm forever. As a result, they desperately needed a holy emperor or even a holy emperor to watch over them. Due to the limitations of their talent, the chances of the ancestors of the 5 great clans becoming a holy emperor were extremely slim. They might even remain saint rulers for the rest of their lives. As a result, the 5 great clans could only place their hopes on the talented juniors. Just as the Tyt tribe and the Golden Sword tribe were celebrating their marriage, a white figure suddenly appeared in the sky in the distance. She was a young woman who seemed to be in her 20s. Even though she was not devastatingly beautiful, she was still quite pretty. At the same time, a vast and powerful presence radiated from her unconsciously, causing the surrounding space to gently tremble. The woman walked through the air. She moved extremely quickly. In the previous moment, she was still on the horizon, but in the next moment, she had appeared above the Tyt tribe as if she had teleported. A fist-sized beast lay obediently on her shoulder. The Tyt tribe did not sense the woman's arrival at all. They continued to celebrate their wedding joyfully. The woman coldly glanced at the Tyt tribe below. Her eyes were immediately filled with intense hatred. Immediately, a powerful killing intent flooded out from her body. Not only did it cause the temperature in the surroundings to plummet, but the killing intent also turned into a bone-chilling gust of wind. It stirred up the clouds in the surroundings, causing the spiritual energy in the surroundings to become chaotic. With a wave of her hand, a powerful barrier immediately enveloped the Tyt tribe. The powerful killing intent crushed down from the sky, enveloping all the people of the Tyt tribe in a single moment. They could not help but shiver as their faces all changed drastically. The wedding ceremony was forcefully stopped as well. At that moment, all the people of the Tyt tribe lost their friendly smiles. They all stared at the sky in shock. Only now did they discover that a white-clothed woman had appeared in the sky out of nowhere. The patriarchs of the Tyt tribe and Golden Sword tribe, as well as all the upper echelon of the two tribes, became even more terrified when they saw the woman. Their hearts churned. "The Kai family," the patriarch of the Tyt tribe said with a trembling voice. His face was completely pale at that moment, and it was filled with despair. The patriarch of the Golden Sword tribe had the same expression as the patriarch of the Tyt tribe. The two of them were not saint rulers, but they had seen saint rulers before and were extremely familiar with them. In their eyes, Kea was no longer a saint ruler. She had already surpassed saint ruler. Another powerful presence appeared, but it was nothing compared to Kea's killing intent. The difference between the two was like the difference between an ant and an elephant. The ancestor of the Tyt clan had appeared. He was the pride of the clan as well as the only saint ruler in the clan. He had reached the 8th heavenly layer. However, the ancestor of the Tyt clan also looked at Kea with a pale face. He had become extremely stern. Back then, he and the ancestors of the other 4 clans had worked together to hunt down Kea, only stopping when Kea had reached the depths of the divine realm. If it were not for the fact that the 5 of them were not confident in being able to protect themselves in the depths of the divine realm, they probably would have charged in without any hesitation as well. Back then, the 5 of them had already guessed that Kea would not necessarily die in the depths of the divine realm with the cultivation method of the Emperor of the 8 Wastelands. They would face Kea's revenge sooner or later, so they had been preparing for the possibility of revenge in the past few years. They had even prepared a fortune so that they could invite a holy emperor to watch over the divine realm in a few decades. Chapter 15:15. Kea, I've underestimated you. I never thought you'd grow to such a level in such a short amount of time. Even if your talent is heaven-defying, even if the cultivation method of the 8 Wastelands was created by an emperor, it's impossible for it to be so heaven-defying. Looks like you've obtained an extraordinary fortune in the depths of the divine realm, the patriarch of the Tyt family said. At that moment, he was filled with regret. He regretted delaying the matter of hiring an expert to watch over their 5 clans for several decades. If their clan had a holy emperor, they would have been able to put up a fight even against Kea, who had grown much stronger. The people who had come to congratulate the Tyt tribe and the Golden Sword tribe all became extremely pale. They were shocked inside. Many of them knew about the destruction of the Kaler tribe in the past. The Kaler tribe was not a renowned tribe in the Sea Realm, but it was still a medium-sized tribe with a saint ruler. It was rather renowned within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers. As a result, the destruction of the Kaler tribe in a single night had caused quite a stir in the region. Although the culprit had not been found, quite a few people had guessed that it was the Tyt tribe, Golden Sword tribe, Herman tribe, Dakar clan, and Yenwei clan. However, no one dared to stand up for the destruction of the Kaler tribe. To the shock of the guests, the young lady of the Kaler tribe, Kea, had actually become the holy emperor. He had come to the Tyt tribe to seek revenge, and had trapped all of them within the barrier. This made them all shiver in fear and unease. They were afraid that Kea would kill them all. Even if several saint rulers worked together, they would not be able to destroy the barrier cast down by a holy emperor in a short amount of time, let alone people like them. Kea's killing intent surged once again when she looked at the saint ruler of the Tyt tribe. Her eyes had almost turned blood-red. She would never forget how the ancestor of the Tyt tribe and the ancestors of the other 4 clans had attacked her father. She would never forget how the 5 of them had chased after her, forcing her to flee to the depths of the divine realm in the end. Tyt tribe, Golden Sword tribe, Herman tribe, Dakar clan, and Yenwei clan, you wiped out my Kaler tribe back then. Today I, Kea, have returned. I will make you pay a heavy price for your actions back then. You will pay for the destruction of the Kaler tribe with the lives of your entire clans, Kea said with a vengeance. She glanced at the people who were not from the 5 great clans and had only come to offer their congratulations. She said, other than the people from the 5 great clans, everyone else who doesn't want to die, leave the barrier immediately. In 10 seconds I will kill everyone in the barrier. With that, the people who had come to offer their congratulations rejoiced. Without any hesitation, they immediately flew out of the barrier, as if they were fleeing for their lives. No one dared to stay for long. As a matter of fact, some of the people of the Tyt tribe knew that they would not be able to escape this time, so they mixed in with the crowd and tried to follow the flow of people out of the barrier. However, as soon as they came into contact with the barrier, they were knocked back. They were unable to pass through the barrier like everyone else. In the blink of an eye, all the people who had come to offer their congratulations had left. No one was willing to stay behind, even those who had close ties with the Tyt tribe. If both sides were evenly matched, perhaps some people would have stayed behind to help the Tyt tribe, but no one was willing to sacrifice their lives for the Tyt tribe when they were faced with certain death. The ancestor of the Tyt tribe did not pay any attention to the situation below. All of his attention was focused on Kea. Just when Kea was looking down, the ancestor of the Tyt tribe moved. He left behind an afterimage in the air as he silently approached Kea with lightning-like speed. He directly sent a palm strike toward Kea's forehead. He knew the difference between him and the Holy Emperor, so he did not hold back at all. He pushed his speed to the limit as well, using a sneak attack against Kea. In order to make the sneak attack as quick as lightning, he did not even have the time to draw his weapon. This was because he knew that this might be his only chance at heavily injuring Kea, as well as his only chance at survival. However, just when the ancestor of the Tyt tribe approached Kea, the surrounding space froze. The ancestor of the Tyt tribe came to a halt, immobilized by the frozen space. Even his full-powered palm strike toward Kea's forehead came to a halt before Kea. At the same time, the little beast on Kea's shoulder opened its eyes at that moment. It stared at the ancestor of the Tyt tribe with an enchanting gaze. It did not seem like it was looking at a person, but at a plate of delicacies. Kea looked at the immobilized ancestor of the Tyt tribe and said coldly, "Back then, I was not your opponent. I could only watch as you killed my father, but today, you no longer have the power to harm me, even if you launch a sneak attack when I'm unprepared." As he said that, Kea swung his hand as well. He gently pressed his hand against the ancestor's chest. The ancestor of the Tyt tribe spat out a mist of blood mixed with bits of his organs. He fell from the sky and smashed into the ground heavily, creating a huge crater. He could no longer get up. Just the palm strike alone had heavily injured him. His organs had all been destroyed, and all his bones had shattered. He could not even stand up anymore. The faces of all the clansmen of the Tyt tribe became ashen when they saw how their strongest ancestor could not even withstand a single blow from Kea. Despair filled their eyes. Back then, the clansmen of the Kaler tribe were killed one by one right before my eyes. Today, I will reduce the clansmen of the Tyt tribe to bones right before your eyes," Kea said through gritted teeth. She then swiped her finger and a crack immediately appeared in the space before her. With a deep hum, winged ants flew out like a flood. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count. In just a few seconds, the flying ants had appeared outside, blotting out the entire region and filling every inch of space within the barrier. These are soaring ants that live in the depths of the divine realm. They're known as the killers of the divine realm. Soaring ants have bodies as tough as steel and specialize in absorbing energy. They're also immune to all energy attacks and spatial abilities. Why have soaring ants from the depths of the divine realm come all the way here? The people outside the barrier had not gone very far. When they saw the soaring ants that filled the barrier, their faces changed drastically as they cried out in disbelief. The little beast on Kaya's shoulder stood up as well. Only now did they discover that it was also a soaring ant. It was only the size of a fist, but it radiated with pressure. Chapter 15-16. Immediately, miserable cries rang out from the Tyt tribe. All the clansmen of the Tyt tribe were covered in soaring ants. As far as the eye could see, all the clansmen of the Tyt tribe were surrounded by countless soaring ants. Even the strongest saint ruler of the tribe was not an exception. The soaring ants devoured the flesh and blood of the clansmen with bone-chilling chewing sounds. Coupled with the miserable cries, the joyous Tyt tribe had become a living hell in a single moment. All the people who had come to congratulate the Tyt tribe outside the barrier stared at the hellish Tyt tribe in fear. Many of them had become sheet-white from fright. They had already realized that the renowned Tyt tribe in a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers was about to be destroyed right before their eyes today. In just a few seconds, the soaring ants returned to the sky. They flapped their wings and circled around Kaya. Rows of white skeletons appeared on the ground. The soaring ants had devoured all the flesh and blood of the clansmen of the Tyt tribe. Gradually, more and more soaring ants flew back into the sky. With their departure, the number of skeletons on the ground rapidly increased. The Tyt tribe was unable to fight back against the soaring ants that were known as the killers of the divine realm. Even the saint ruler ancestor of the Tyt tribe could only roar out in pain. He could only watch as several dozen powerful soaring ants latched onto him and devoured his flesh and blood. A while later, the Tyt tribe was covered in skeletons. Other than the saint ruler ancestor who continued to wail out in pain, there was not a single living person left. All the clansmen of the Tyt tribe had been devoured, leaving behind only white skeletons. Even the saint ruler ancestor of the Tyt tribe had been reduced to white bones apart from his head. He seemed vicious and terrifying. The soaring ants did not kill the saint ruler ancestor of the Tyt tribe. After devouring all his flesh and blood, they all shot into the sky. Kaya watched this coldly as she hovered in the air. She showed no pity at all. She slowly extended her hand and controlled the space around the ancestor of the Tyt tribe. She made him slowly float up and coldly said, "Look at the current situation of your Tyt tribe. These clansmen have all died because of you. If you hadn't wiped out my Kaler tribe back then, your Tyt tribe wouldn't have ended up like this. From today onwards, the Tyt tribe will cease to exist in the sea realm." The ancestor of the Tyt tribe was ashen, but he continued to stare fixedly at Kaya. He gritted his teeth and said, "I regret it so much. I regret letting you escape back then. I regret not chasing you into the depths of the divine realm to kill you. If I had known earlier that you could progress so quickly, the 5 of us would have chased you into the depths of the divine realm even if it meant risking our lives." A cold light flashed through Kaya's eyes. They were filled with a baleful aura in a single moment. Extending a finger, a powerful energy shot out from the tip of her finger and pierced the saint ruler ancestor's forehead, wiping him out. The little beast on Kaya's shoulder immediately flew off. It moved extremely quickly, only leaving behind a faint blur. When it arrived before Kaya again, there was a space ring on its 2 front legs. It passed the space ring to Kaya as if it was trying to please her. Kaya seemed to already know that the little beast was extremely smart, so she was not surprised by its actions at all. She accepted the space ring from the little beast and stowed it away without even looking at it. Afterward, she swiped her finger again and the space before her immediately ripped open. The countless soaring ants in the sky above the Tyt tribe seemed to have found their way home. They all gathered from all directions, disappearing into the crack like a flood. When the last soaring ant entered the crack, Kaya left and went to the next tribe. The barrier around the Tyt tribe vanished, but the people who had come to congratulate her all stood there in a daze. They stared at the lifeless Tyt tribe in a daze as they felt extremely unsettled. A medium-sized tribe with a saint king overseeing it had been annihilated so effortlessly. It had only taken a dozen breaths of time from beginning to end. This deeply shocked every single one of their passionate hearts. A while later, someone returned to their senses. As if they had thought of something, great joy filled their faces. They lunged toward the skeletons of the TYT tribe in an extraordinary manner and began to plunder the space rings. The other people all returned to their senses as well. They all charged over eagerly for the space rings, and some of them even began to fight over it. The space rings had all been perfectly preserved. Kea only took the most valuable one, leaving the rest behind. Afterward, Kea went to the Golden Sword tribe, the Herman tribe, the Dakar clan, and the Yenwei clan. She had wiped them all out. Not a single person was spared. No one investigated who had wiped out 5 medium-sized tribes in a single day, nor did anyone stand up for them. However, the miserable deaths of all the clansmen of the 5 tribes had attracted everyone's attention. This was because all the clansmen of the 5 tribes had lost their flesh and blood, leaving behind only white bones. Even the saint ruler ancestors were no exception. Just as everyone was discussing why the clansmen of the 5 clans had lost their flesh and blood, Kea had appeared in the Divine Realm with a group of soaring ants known as the Assassins of the Divine Realm. The shocking news spread from the direction of the TYT tribe, shaking up the entire Sea Realm. It had even attracted the attention of the 3 divine halls in the Sea Realm. At this moment, a white-clothed woman with a small beast on her shoulder sat in an inn in a bustling city in the sea region. She stared out of the window absent-mindedly. She stared blankly at the bustling street that was filled with people and carriages. She was Kea, the person who had wiped out 5 medium-sized clans in a row and had even shaken up the entire Sea Realm. The TYT tribe, the Golden Sword tribe, the Herman tribe, the Dakar clan, and the Yenwei clan had all vanished in the Sea Realm. She had finally avenged the Kaler tribe, but Kea did not feel happy at all. She only felt pain. Chapter 15-17. In the past, I was the daughter of the Kaler tribe. I was my father's only daughter. Not only did I have a father who doted on me a lot, but I also had several thousand clansmen. We lived in a happy family, but now my father is gone. My clansmen have all vanished as well. Their smiling faces only exist in my memories now. Kea sat by the window as she stared outside blankly. 2 streaks of tears ran down her face. The Sea Realm was vast, and the population numbered in the billions, yet she could not find any relatives. As a result, she was filled with loneliness. Kea drank all the alcohol in her cup in a single gulp. The alcohol seemed to have turned into a burning flame that wreaked havoc in her chest, causing her face to redden slightly. She raised her head and stared blankly at the deep blue sky. The sky was both familiar and unfamiliar. To the current Kea, the Sea Realm no longer held any attachment. Perhaps to Kea, the Sea Realm had already become a place of sorrow. It only made her feel heartache. At this moment, Kea heard some of the conversations in the inn. Her somewhat empty eyes suddenly narrowed. There's still one more day until the wedding of the greatest human expert. I heard that Sovereign Jianshan's wedding is rather sudden, and he's made some preparations, but the wedding will be unprecedentedly grand, of course. Don't you know who Sovereign Jianshan is? Although Sovereign Jianshan was born as a human, his generosity and carelessness won him the respect of all the experts in the world. After all, many holy emperors and holy emperors were only able to break through because of the heavenly resources Sovereign Jianshan bestowed upon them. I've also heard that Sovereign Jianshan helped out a lot when our great goddess of the sea reconstructed her body. I'm guessing that the great Poseidon of our sea race will attend Sovereign Jianshan's wedding. I can't speak for the great goddess of the sea race, but I am certain that all the emperors of our sea race will attend Sovereign Jianshan's wedding in a day. With so many holy emperors attending Sovereign Jianshan's wedding, just the thought of it makes me envious. It's said that Sovereign Jianshan is the ruler of the Turtle Clan. What's strange is that Sovereign Jianshan is clearly born as a human, so how can he be the ruler of the Turtle Clan? This rumor is probably false. I don't know if Sovereign Jianchen is the ruler of the Turtle Clan, but when I visited the Turtle Clan a few months ago, I saw that Sovereign Jianchen's statue had already been erected in the Turtle Clan, with someone taking the lead. More and more people in the inn began to discuss Jianchen with great interest. Very soon, the entire inn fell silent. Basically everyone had shifted their attention to Jianchen, and there were even a few people who began to argue intensely over how they spoke about Jianchen. Kea, who sat in the same inn, temporarily forgot about her sorrow. She quietly listened to everyone's discussion about Jianchen. She could not help but think about how Jianchen had gifted her the cultivation method of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands. Although the Kaler tribe had been destroyed because of the cultivation method of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands, Kea had never blamed Jianchen. She understood that the reason why her cultivation method of the Emperor of the Eight Wastelands had been leaked and led to the destruction of the tribe was because her father trusted his 5 good friends too much. Kea said nothing. She sat there and drank quietly as she paid attention to all the discussions about Jianchen. After so many years, she had no idea what had happened to Jianchen or how he had become the sovereign of the human race. She wanted to learn more about the situation from these people. However, after listening for quite some time, she discovered that the people in the inn were basically discussing Jianchen's wedding. Other than knowing that Jianchen was about to get married, there was no other useful information. Kea knew that she would not be able to learn anything if she continued listening. As a result, she stood up and clasped her hands at the people in the inn. Warriors! Kea did not speak very loudly, but her voice drowned out everyone in the inn. At the same time, her voice was like a thunderclap in everyone's ears. It was deafening, forcing them to stop their discussions about Jianchen. For a moment, the noisy inn fell silent. Everyone stared at Kea with some fear and dread. They had already realized that this ordinary-looking woman in front of them was an extremely powerful expert. Kea had shocked everyone in the inn with a single voice, so it was obviously not difficult for her to find out what she wanted to find out next. In order to befriend such an expert, everyone in the inn scrambled to answer Kea's questions. Every single one of them spat out saliva as they answered everything they knew. Kea understood everything very soon. She left behind a few quaking thunders to the people before leaving. I never thought that warrior Jianchen would have already surpassed Saint Emperor, and I never thought that the matter of the world of Forsaken Saints would be so great in the years I spent in the depths of the divine realm. I never thought that so many things would have happened in the outside world. There's still a day until warrior Jianchen's wedding. There's nothing in the sea realm that I want to stay in, so it's best if I go to the Tianyuan continent, thought Jianchen. Afterwards, she shot into the air like an arrow, vanishing in a single instant. At the same time, 4 old men walked side by side through a bustling street in a city several million kilometers away from Kea. The 4 old men wore the same robes. At a closer glance, it was quite possible to see that even their faces and presences were shockingly similar. I never thought that so many things would have happened in the outside world while we were in seclusion. Not only have a few experts who have surpassed the Holy Emperor suddenly appeared, but we've also discovered the entrance to another world, one of the old men said nonchalantly. Brother, the entire sea realm is talking about how the greatest human expert, Sovereign Jianchen, will be holding his wedding in a day, and that the entrance to another world is on the Tianyuan continent. Experts have gathered on the Tianyuan continent right now, so it must be extremely lively. Why don't we go there as well? The second old man suggested. Chapter 15:18. After making up their minds, the 4 old men no longer hesitated. They immediately left the sea realm and made their way to the Tianyuan continent. If Jianchen were present, he would definitely recognize the 4 old men with a single glance. To no surprise, they were a Da, a Air, a San, and a Sea, who he had met in the divine realm. In the blink of an eye, the day of Jianchen's wedding arrived. Not only was every house in Flame City decorated with lanterns and banners, but every street in the city was paved with a red carpet. pink petals scattered on the carpet, giving off a refreshing fragrance. On the two sides of every street, bands in red robes played gongs and drums. They formed a long line that led from the entrance to the center of the city, where the wedding was held. A few guests had already arrived with gifts outside the city. All of them landed outside the city and entered the city on foot. Even someone as powerful as the Holy Emperor did not dare to directly fly into the city. A large group of female attendants stood in a neat formation at the entrance of the city, waiting there silently. Once important people arrived, they would personally lead them into the city. Even though there were quite a few Holy Emperor among the people who had come to congratulate Jianchen on his wedding, many of them entered the city alone with gifts. There were no female attendants to receive them. The guests that the female attendants received were not just because they were powerful. As a result, all the people who were received by the female attendants felt a great sense of honor. Tianmu Ling of the ancient Tianmu clan has arrived. Qin Ji, the third prince of the Qin Empire, has arrived. As the shouts that rang through the entire city rang out from the entrance, the attendants constantly announced a few special guests. The third prince of the Qin Empire wore luxurious robes embroidered with golden threads as he entered the city with Tianmu Ling. Two benevolent old men followed beside Tianmu Ling. To no surprise, they were Jun Moheo and Wang Yinhong, the old man's wife. With Jianchen's assistance, Jun Moheo and Wang Yinhong had broken through to the Holy Emperor level many years ago. They had both reached the 7th heavenly layer, becoming the ancestors of the Tianmu clan. Tianmu Ling and Qin Ji were both Jianchen's friends. Even though the two of them were not worth mentioning in the eyes of the Holy Emperor in terms of strength or background, the two of them enjoyed treatment that even the Holy Emperor did not receive in the city. The two of them were respectfully invited in by the female attendants arranged by the city. Little brother Jianchen's wedding sure is grand. So many peak experts have come from all over to congratulate him. It's still early in the morning, but I can already vaguely sense the auras of over 20 Holy Emperor experts. There's still a large group of people who haven't arrived yet. I'm so envious that my eyes have turned red. In the future, if someone is willing to marry me with such extravagance, I'll be willing to marry him even if he's far weaker than me. Tianmu Ling sighed in amazement. Her face was filled with envy. Qin Ji laughed involuntarily when he heard that. He said, Tianmu Ling, once you become the greatest human expert, holding a wedding like this will obviously be a piece of cake. Tianmu Ling pouted and said disdainfully, if I become the greatest human expert, there'll probably be no one else who's worthy of me aside from little brother. Qin Ji and Tianmu Ling chatted and laughed as they made their way to the wedding. They disappeared at the end of the street very soon. The 4 Imperial Protector of the Qin Empire and the Qin Emperor have arrived. The 4 Imperial Protector of the Fire Dragon Fruit and the Fire Emperor have arrived. The ancestor of the Kara clan of the Holy Emperor's Empire, Kalilo, has arrived with Kara Livy. The President and Grand Elder of the Radiant Saint Master Union have arrived. The Great Elders of the Tyrant's Blade School have arrived. The Pavilion Master of the Pure Heart Pavilion has arrived. The Elven Queen of the Wasteland Continent has arrived. The Dwarven King of the Wasteland Continent has arrived. The Holy Emperor of the Pung clan of the Beast God Continent, Sangqiong, has arrived. The Hall Master of the Poseidon Hall, the Hall Master of the Heaven's Spirit Hall, and the Hall Master of the Dragon God Temple have arrived. As great figures gathered in Flame City one after another, the city immediately welcomed its most glorious moment since its founding. Over half of the experts in the world had gathered in Flame City, creating a legend on the Tianyuan continent. This was because over half of the experts in the world had never gathered in Flame City before, even during the glorious ancient times. In particular, when the sea goddess, the war god of the 100 races, Tai Ta, Yang Lai, Gui Hai Dao, and Feng Xiaotian all appeared in Flame City, the city's glory immediately reached an unprecedented height. Very soon, Flame City was packed with people. The city, which was not very large in the first place, was now filled with almost 10 million people. They filled the streets and alleys, filling up every inch of space in the city. The number of people gathered outside Raging Flame City was several times greater than the number inside the city. From high up in the sky, one could see nothing but a black mass of heads. It was an endless sea of people. Even though he had not invited a lot of people to the wedding, he only needed to spread the news of his wedding as the greatest human expert, and countless people would come uninvited to congratulate him. Jianchen did not forget about the villagers of Longevity Valley. He sent people to construct a space gate leading to Longevity Valley and invited all the villagers. These villagers who had lived in Longevity Valley for their entire lives were naturally extremely curious about everything when they came to the outside world for the first time. After arriving in Flame City, they pointed at their surroundings and sighed in amazement. Is this the city that Jianchen built on the Tianyuan continent? I never thought it would be so big. It's much bigger than our village. Let's not talk about it being much bigger than our village. Even if we moved the entire valley here, we'd only be able to take up a tiny corner of this city. As for our village, it'd be nothing. I never thought that Jianchen City would be so big. I naively thought that Flame City would be smaller than our village. Jianchen really is impressive. The villagers of Longevity Valley wore simple clothes. Almost all of them wore patched linen clothes. As soon as they appeared in Flame City, they stood in stark contrast to the extravagantly dressed guests around them. They formed a rather unique group and attracted the attention of everyone very soon. How strange. Today is Sovereign Jianchen's wedding. All the people who can set foot in Flame City are renowned figures. Why have a bunch of country bumpkins suddenly come here? And they're so weak. Many of them are even cripples who can't cultivate Saint Force. A woman who had come with her seniors stared at the group of people from Longevity Valley and frowned. The woman seemed to be 18 years old. She possessed an alluring beauty and a noble bearing. She possessed a hint of pride that she had cultivated since she was young. Shut up, Ronger. Don't forget where we are. This is Flame City, Sovereign Jianchen's territory. It's not the imperial capital of our Felicity Empire. You can't underestimate anyone who can appear in Flame City, no matter how ordinary they are. Do you understand? A middle-aged man in a dragon robe stood by the woman's side. At this moment, he had a solemn expression as he spoke about the peerless beauty called Rong. Chapter 15:19. Yes, father. The girl called Rong stuck out her tongue mischievously and answered obediently. However, she continued to look at the villagers with great curiosity. The new emperor of the Felicity Empire also stared at the people of Longevity Valley deeply. He said, "These people seem ordinary and weak, but every single one of them dares to call Sovereign Jianchen by his name without any respect. They even compare the greatest city in the world, Jianchen, to a village. If I've guessed correctly, these people must be closely related to Sovereign Jianchen." The woman called Rong Er's mouth dropped in shock when she heard that. Disbelief filled her face. At the same time, many people in the surroundings guessed that the villagers of Longevity Valley were extraordinary, just like the new emperor of the Felicity Empire. As a result, even though the villagers bumped into many Holy Emperor and Holy Emperor experts, none of them dared to underestimate them. Even when the young men of Longevity Valley widened their eyes and drooled as they stared at the beautiful women in the crowd, the women with impressive backgrounds could only frown slightly. After rubbing their lips gently, they turned and left. The woman called Rong attracted the attention of some of the young men of Longevity Valley as well. At this moment, a few young men in their early 20s were staring at Rong Er's face. They were unable to look away, as if their souls had been sucked away by her. So beautiful. She's like a fairy. She's definitely the woman of my dreams. What a beautiful fairy. She's about the same age as me. If I could take her as my wife, I'd be willing to give up a few decades of my life. Look at her legs. They're so beautiful and white. They're the prettiest legs I've ever seen. I never thought that a woman's legs could be so beautiful. They must feel really good. the young men of Longevity Valley all drooled as they stared fixedly at the woman called Rong. They either stared blankly at her face or stared at her slender, jade-like legs without hiding it at all. It was even possible to hear them gulping. The woman called Ronger also noticed the wolf-like gazes of these people. She immediately felt goosebumps all over her body. She shrunk her neck in fear and quickly hid behind the middle-aged man in the dragon robe. She revealed a look of lingering fear. Only at this moment did she realize that those burly young men in coarse clothes were actually so terrifying. Their gazes were simply as if they wanted to swallow her whole. Ronger, let's go. The man in the dragon robe was also unhappy. He pulled the woman called Ronger and left the sight of the villagers. Why did she leave so quickly? I haven't seen enough. A young man in dragon robes. He continued to stare in the direction that Ronger had disappeared in. His eyes were filled with reluctance and deep admiration. She definitely can't have gone far. Why don't we go after her? Another young man suggested. His face was burning with desire. Let's not. Grandfather told us not to run around. Look at how many people there are and how big this place is. What if we get lost? When they heard this, the youths from Longevity Valley could only reluctantly give up on the idea of catching a glimpse of her beauty. Little did they know that their every word and action was seen by many of the guests in the surroundings. The strongest of the guests had already reached the level of Holy Emperor, while the weakest was a Saint Ruler. Even though the young men spoke very softly, the people in the surroundings still heard them clearly. They all shook their heads inside and thought, where did these young men come from? He, little brothers, it's very impolite of you to stare at a girl's legs like that. A burst of enchanting laughter rang out. When this seductive voice reached the ears of the burly men from Longevity Valley, they immediately felt their bones soften. Their hearts began to pound uncontrollably. Tianmu Ling walked out of the crowd with small steps and a smile on her face. Every movement of hers was filled with a charm that mesmerized everyone. This charm had no effect on the experts in the surroundings, but it was fatal to the youths of Longevity Valley, who had no self-control. So beautiful! In an instant, the eyes of the youths from Longevity Valley widened. They all drooled as they stared at the gorgeously dressed Tianmu Ling in a daze. Tianmu Ling did not care about their gazes at all. She smiled charmingly and asked, "Little brothers, am I beautiful?" "Yes." The young men from Longevity Valley replied at the same time. They were stunned and their breathing was ragged. Their eyes had almost popped out of their sockets. Tianmu Ling gently sighed. She seemed rather lonely, making her seem pitiful. She said, "So what if I'm beautiful? There's still no one who wants to marry me. No one wants me." "Who says no one wants you, beautiful lady? Why don't you marry me, Big Stone?" "I, Big Stone, want you, lady, become my wife. I swear that I will treat you well for the rest of my life. I will never let you down. I will eat meat every day, lady. My father is the most powerful person in the village, and he's an Earth Saint Master. It won't be difficult for him to become a Heaven Saint Master in the future. You know Heaven Saint Masters, right? They can fly freely in the sky like birds. If you're willing to marry me, once my father becomes a Heaven Saint Master, I will definitely beg him to carry you and fly freely in the sky like birds." The young men from Longevity Valley thought that Tianmu Ling had taken a liking to them when they heard what she said. However, she was too embarrassed to say it as a girl, which was why she purposefully said it to hint them. They all began to excitedly pursue Tianmu Ling in what they believed to be the most intense way possible. In order to capture Tianmu Ling's heart, the young men took out everything they had. They were just short of bringing up their ancestors. Even Tianmu Ling was stunned by what those people had said, as what they had said had completely overturned her understanding of the world. On the Tianyuan continent, pursuing a girl was nothing more than showing off one's strength and background. However, the people before her had actually brought up the daily necessities of life. Tianmu Ling rubbed her temples with a slight headache. She discovered that she had underestimated them far too much. She needed to re-evaluate her evaluation of them. She was a mighty holy emperor. Ripping open space gates was a piece of cake for her. When had she ever needed a heaven-sent master to carry her and fly in the sky like a bird? Little brothers, if you really want to marry me, it's not impossible. Once you defeat Jianchen fair and square, I'll marry you, Tianmu Ling giggled. She thought that after hearing her words, the young men would definitely reveal disappointed expressions and dejectedly return. However, she never thought that when she looked at the burly young men in front of her again, not only did they not reveal dejected expressions, their eyes instead brightened, and they revealed expressions of great joy. Miss, are you telling the truth? If I defeat Jianchen, you'll really marry me and become my wife? Hu Zai excitedly looked at Tianmu Ling. From the great joy on his face, anyone could tell that it was not fake. Hu Zai had no idea how powerful Jianchen was, nor did he know of Jianchen's fame on the Tianyuan continent. In his mind, Jianchen was amiable and treated all the old people in Longevity Valley with great courtesy. He did not seem much different from people of the same age. Not only was Hu Zai the strongest person of his age in the village, but he was also twice as big as Jianchen. As a result, Hu Zai did not think that defeating Jianchen would be difficult. Tianmu Ling was stunned once again. This time, she was not the only one stunned. Even the countless guests in the surroundings were stunned. Even the Holy Emperor was stunned. Chapter 1520. However, no matter how they stared at the youths from Longevity Valley for a long time, they could not see any signs of them hiding their strength. In their eyes, two of the youths had not even condensed a saint weapon. They could not even be called cultivators, let alone defeat the strongest human, Jianchen. Tianmu Ling came back to her senses and looked at the youths before her with an extremely strange gaze. She giggled. Little brothers, then big sister will wait for your good news. I hope you can defeat Jianchen soon and marry big sister. Don't worry, miss. After Jianchen's wedding, I'll immediately go challenge him. I'll definitely make you my wife, Hu Zai said with determination. His eyes flickered with the light of not giving up until he achieved his goal. The youths beside Hu Zai were all disappointed and filled with regret. They also did not know just how powerful Jianchen was, but they knew that they definitely could not beat Hu Zai. Not only had Hu Zai condensed a saint weapon, he had also reached the realm of saint masters. Although the farce here had attracted the attention of many people, it did not affect Jianchen's wedding at all. In the blink of an eye, it was close to noon. Suddenly, an uproar rang out across the entire city. The red-robed Jianchen, Yu, and Huang Luan appeared on the platform that was 6 meters tall. Everyone, look, the bride and groom have appeared. The groom is Sovereign Jianchen. I've finally seen Sovereign Jianchen in person. I never thought Sovereign Jianchen would be even younger than in the portrait. Not only is Sovereign Jianchen powerful, he's handsome as well. If I could marry Sovereign Jianchen and become his concubine, I'd be willing even if I could only live for 10 years. Someone like you wants to be Sovereign Jianchen's concubine? Why don't you take a look at the background of Sovereign Jianchen's bride? One is the only direct disciple of Fairy Haoyue, while the other is a holy emperor expert. The appearance of the bride and groom immediately pushed the atmosphere to a climax. Many people stared at Jianchen, Yu, and Yu with envious gazes. There was also some jealousy among them. At this moment, a woman in a white dress with a veil over her face stood in an inconspicuous corner among the sea of people. She silently stared at Jianchen, Yu, and Yu in their crimson wedding robes. Her expression was mixed, and it was slightly gloomy. She was the second young lady of the Tianqin clan, Qin. She had secretly come to Jianchen's wedding without telling anyone. Even when she saw Qin Shao chatting happily with Jianchen in the crowd, she did not go up to greet him. All she wanted to do was stand in the corner quietly by herself and silently watch Jianchen complete this unprecedented wedding. At the same time, Kea, Ada, and his brothers arrived in Flame City as well. They were only several dozen meters away from each other. Kea originally stood in the crowd as she stared at Jianchen with mixed feelings. Suddenly, she seemed to sense something. She looked away from Jianchen and stared at a certain spot to the side. Even though many people blocked her view, Kea could still see Ada and the other three standing several dozen meters away with a single glance. She discovered that the four of them were staring at her with shining eyes. The four of them were confused and confused. Kea frowned slightly. She could sense a vague threat from them, and she felt uncomfortable when they stared at her like that. Afterwards, she turned around and vanished from their vision. The four of them stared in the direction that Kea had left in. After a moment of silence, Ada said to the other three through a communication technique, "Second bro, third bro, fourth bro, you've noticed that woman earlier as well. Have you seen her before? Big bro, the four of us have never left each other's side. As long as you've seen someone before, the three of us have seen them as well. If you haven't seen them before, then we obviously haven't seen them before," San replied. Ada frowned as he pondered. He murmured, "That's strange. I've clearly never seen that woman before, but why do I feel an uncontrollable killing intent whenever I see her? It's like there's some deep grudge between us, but I don't know her at all." "Big brother, so you have this feeling too. I thought that I was the only one who had this feeling." "Me too. When I got close to that woman, I also felt a strange killing intent appear in my heart. I almost couldn't control it just now." "Me too. I feel the same as you." San and a C all spoke up. They all frowned. The four of them were completely puzzled by this matter as well. The wedding proceeded in an orderly manner. No matter how many people gathered in Flame City, there was no disorder at all. Everyone followed the rules of the city cautiously. After all, today was the wedding of the greatest human expert. No one dared to cause any trouble on such an important day. Today was obviously not a good day. The sky quietly became a little gloomy, and there was a faint sound of thunder. A gust of wind gradually blew between heaven and earth, as if a storm was brewing. Jianchen stood on the platform and clasped his hands at the guests who had come to attend his wedding. After a few words, rain began to fall from the sky. Jianchen suddenly looked at the sky and said indifferently, "Today is the day of my Jianchen's wedding. The sky must be clear and the sun shines brightly. How can it rain?" As he said that, Jianchen waved his hand at the sky. Immediately, a resplendent strand of sword chi that was several meters long shot into the sky, dispersing the brewing clouds. Immediately, the bright sunlight shone on the ground, illuminating the gloomy world once again. However, after a few breaths, the temperature of the surroundings suddenly plummeted. In the azure sky, heavy snowflakes suddenly floated down. The snowflakes came extremely suddenly, without the slightest warning, as if they had appeared out of thin air. They blotted out the sky and dyed the azure sky snow-white. Even the sunlight became somewhat dim. Moreover, the heat from the scorching sun in the sky was unable to melt the heavy snow that had suddenly drifted down. Snow in June. Low cries immediately rang out in Flame City. The snow had come far too abnormally. It had actually appeared on a scorching summer day. Chapter 1521. Tai Ta, Poseidon, Yang Lai, Guihai Dao, and Feng Xiaotian all became rather stern. They stared at the snowy sky. The great elders of the 10 great protector clans all revealed strange expressions. They had experienced such a scene several dozen years ago. At this moment, they could not help but connect the dots of the scene from several dozen years ago. Has the Arctic ice goddess Hall descended? At this moment, many of the great elders of the 10 great protector clans could not help but have such a thought. Brother, you actually didn't tell me that you were getting married. Do you still see me as your sister? A voice that Jianchen was familiar with rang out. A woman silently appeared in the snowy sky. She possessed an alluring beauty. Her clothes were whiter than snow as she hovered in the air, as if she had fused with the snow. Sister! Jianchen cried out in surprise and joy. He was very excited. He was overjoyed that Changyang Mingyue had come to his wedding. Tai Ta, Poseidon, Yang Lai, Gui Haidao, and Feng Xiaotian all stared at Changyang Mingyue at the same time. Their eyes narrowed at the same time as shock filled their faces. This was because they could tell that Changyang Mingyue had actually surpassed the Holy Emperor. She was a sovereign of the Origin realm. Moreover, she had reached late receival. Changyang Mingyue gently snorted. She stared at Jianchen with great dissatisfaction and said, "To think that you still recognize me as your sister. I had thought that you had forgotten about me long ago. You didn't even invite me to such an important day, yet I still came uninvited. Fortunately, I'm not late. I'm just in time for your wedding ceremony." Mingyue. Yu Fengyan trembled in the crowd. She finally could not help but call out loudly, ignoring the occasion. Changyang Mingyue stiffened. She looked at the haggard Yu Fengyan and immediately felt a lump in her throat. Her eyes reddened slightly as tears began to flow uncontrollably. She no longer cared about catching up with Jianchen. She charged toward Yu Fengyan as a blur and hugged her emotionally. Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian sat on the high platform as they smiled at Changyang Mingyue and Yu Fengyan, who had finally reunited. However, Jianchen's wedding was taking place right now, so it was not the time for them to catch up. Even though the two of them missed Changyang Mingyue very much as well, they could not help but suppress it. Although Changyang Mingyue was already an Origin realm expert, she rejected Yang Lai's offer of a seat at the head of the table, which was reserved for Origin realm experts. She remained below with Yu Fengyan. Now that Changyang Mingyue had emerged from seclusion, her profound ice body had already reached a certain level. She could control the coldness within her as she pleased, so the two of them no longer dared to get too close to each other like last time outside the Ice Goddess Hall. Yang Lai, your descendants really are impressive this time. They actually have 2 Origin realm experts, and they've cultivated for less than a century, Gui Haidao said to Yang Lai rather enviously. Yang Lai laughed aloud. He was overjoyed inside as well. He felt proud that he had 2 such outstanding great-grandchildren. Changyang, whose potential is extremely great as well. If he enters the Saints' world and joins our Pure Heart Pavilion, he'll definitely be treated like a treasure by the elders. He'll be raised as a supreme prodigy and might even join the Pavilion of Heaven and Earth, Feng Xiaotian exclaimed. Feng Xiaotian exclaimed. In his heart, he couldn't help but admire Yang Lai. He actually managed to produce 3 peerless juniors at once. Ha 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 ha, Changyang Ba's not bad at all. Once Jianchen's great-grandson's wedding is over, I'll definitely reward him properly. Yang Lai laughed out loud. Yang Lai laughed heartily. At this moment, the wrinkles on his old face seemed to have lessened a lot, and his entire person seemed to have become younger. First, bow to the heavens and earth. Chang Bo presided over the wedding from the platform. With his call, Jianchen, Huang Luan, and Yu Yu immediately turned around. They faced the east and bowed to the heavens and earth. When the 3 of them bowed, Raging Flame City instantly fell silent. Only Uncle Chang, who had been in charge of the wedding, seemed to have become the only voice in the city. Second, bow to your parents, Chang Bo called out again. Jianchen, Yu Yu, and Huang Luan turned around and bowed a second time. This time, they bowed to Jianchen's parents, Changyang Ba and Bai Yuntian. Good. Changyang Ba smiled happily as he looked at Jianchen, Huang Luan, and Bai Yuntian kindly. He sighed emotionally inside. Who would have thought that the wedding of his son, Changyang Ba, would attract all the experts of the world to congratulate him? Husband and wife bow to each other. Mother and groom enter the bridal chamber. With Chang Bo's final command, Jianchen, Yu Yu, and Huang Luan left the platform under the escort of several female attendants. In the next few days, the 3 of them were not allowed to meet with anyone else until the end of the wedding. The moment Jianchen, Yu Yu, and Huang Luan vanished from the platform, a tear finally rolled down the corner of Qin Qin's eyes. She turned around in a daze and was about to leave Flame City. However, as soon as she turned around, she discovered a boy and a girl standing behind her. The girl seemed to be around 11 or 12. She wore white clothes and seemed obedient and cute. The boy only seemed to be around 4 or 5. He was chubby and had a head of golden hair, golden eyelashes, and golden eyes. Even his clothes were golden, as if they had been cast from gold. Sister, today is my big brother's big day. Everyone is happy, but why are you crying? Xiao Ling can sense that you're not happy at all. Why is that? The girl stared at Qin Qin curiously with her large, bright eyes as she asked in confusion. Qin Qin was in a bad mood. Qin Qin was in a very bad mood. She did not want to respond, but when she saw the girl's innocent face, she could not bear it anymore. She forced out a smile and pinched the girl's cheek. She said gently, "It's because I feel very bad, so I can't help but cry. Little sister, you're still young right now. There are many things you don't understand. You'll understand once you grow up, okay?" With that, Qin Qin left the city. The girl nodded as if she understood. She seemed to be at a loss. Clearly, she did not completely understand what Qin Qin meant. "Sister Xiaoling, what do you mean by sad? Do I have to cry if I'm sad?" The boy in golden clothes asked in confusion. He was filled with curiosity. About that, Brother Xiao Jin, you're still young right now, so there are many things you don't understand. You'll understand once you grow up, okay? Let's go. I'll take you somewhere else." As the little girl spoke, she pulled the little boy and skipped away. She darted left and right in a very lively manner.